What if Goku grew up with his actual parents? I know sounds simple, right? But hear me out. We're talking about Bardock, the guy who literally predicted Frieza's betrayal, raising his son with proper Saiyan techniques. Plus Jin, who was basically the only kind-hearted Saiyan on the entire planet. This isn't just Goku but stronger. This is Goku learning to fight and heal, getting Super Saiyan through love instead of rage, having a big brother in Raditz who actually cares about him. The ripple effects are insane. Picture this. Saiyan family escapes planet Vegeta, lands on Yardrat, and slowly becomes the galaxy's most trusted protectors. Family dinners between saving civilizations. Goku teaching his own son that strength means protection, not conquest. Hit that like if this sounds cool, and let's jump in. The screaming started in his head again. Bardock pressed his palm against his forehead, trying to block out the images that weren't his own, cities burning, a massive ship hanging in space like a predator, and always that damn lizard's face smiling while worlds died. But this vision was different. Among the chaos and destruction, he saw something new. A small ship, 3 figures inside, and the blinding flash of planet Vegeta's destruction from a distance that meant survival. Not again, he muttered, stumbling against the wall of their modest home. The psychic episodes had been getting stronger, more frequent. Most Saiyans would have called it a curse, but Bardock was starting to think it might be the only blessing he'd ever receive. Bardock, Jin's voice came from the kitchen, soft with concern. She always knew when the visions hit him. Is it bad this time? He looked up to see her standing in the doorway, their infant son Kakarot sleeping peacefully in her arms. The baby's tiny tail was wrapped around his own wrist, a habit he'd developed in his first few weeks of life. Seeing them there, so normal and unaware of what was coming, made Bardock's chest tighten. Jin, he said, his voice rougher than usual. We need to talk. She must have heard something in his tone because she immediately moved to put Kakarot in his crib before returning to sit across from him at their small table. Her dark eyes searched his face, reading the tension there. Tell me. Bardock had never been good with words. He was a fighter, not a talker. But looking at his mate, his gentle, trusting mate who still believed in the good in people despite being married to a Saiyan warrior, he knew he had to find the right ones. Frieza's coming, he said simply. Not for conquest this time, for extermination. Jin's face went pale. When? Soon, maybe days. The visions aren't clear on time, but they're clear on everything else. He reached across the table and took her hands in his scarred ones. Jin, he's going to destroy planet Vegeta. All of it. Everyone. She was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Most Saiyan females would have demanded proof or called him crazy or started planning revenge. Jin just squeezed his hands and asked, what do we do? This was why he loved her. No dramatics, no denial, just trust and practicality. The vision showed me something else, he continued. A way out. There's a prototype ship in the tech district, long-range capability enough for 3 people. If we can get to it before Frieza arrives, we run. It wasn't a question. Jin had never been ashamed of choosing family over Saiyan pride. We run, he confirmed, and we raise Kakarot somewhere safe. As if summoned by the mention of his name, a soft cry came from the crib. Jin went to check on him while Bardock stared out the window at the red sky of planet Vegeta. Somewhere out there, King Vegeta was probably planning some useless resistance. The other Saiyans would fight and die with their boots on, convinced that warrior pride was worth more than their lives. Maybe they were right. Maybe running made him weak. But when Jin returned with Kakarot, now awake and looking around with those curious black eyes that seemed too old for his infant face, Bardock knew he didn't care about pride anymore. How long do we have? Jin asked, settling back into her chair with the baby. Not long. I saw the ship in the vision, Hangar 7 in the tech district. It's heavily guarded, but during the shift change at sunset. He trailed off, doing mental calculations. We'd have maybe a 10-minute window. That's not much time. It's enough. He hoped, pack light, only what we absolutely need, and Jin, he paused, meeting her eyes. Once we leave, we can never come back. Even if somehow planet Vegeta survives, Frieza will know we escaped. We'll be fugitives. She looked down at Kakarot, who had grabbed onto her finger and was trying to bring it to his mouth. What kind of life will he have growing up in exile? A life, Bardock said firmly. That's more than he'll have if we stay. The next few hours passed in tense preparation. They couldn't pack much without arousing suspicion. Just some basic supplies, a few sentimental items, and the portable datapad that contained most of Saiyan history and culture. Everything else would have to be left behind. Jin moved through their home with quiet efficiency, occasionally stopping to touch things they were leaving. The chair Bardock had made for her, the window where she liked to watch the sunrise, the marks on the wall where they'd measured Kakarot's growth in his first weeks. Bardock checked and rechecked his armor and weapons. He'd need to get them past the guards, and that would likely mean fighting. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd have to kill fellow Saiyans to save his family from the fate that awaited all Saiyans. As the sun began to set, painting the sky an even deeper red, Bardock picked up their single travel pack and looked around their home one last time. It wasn't much, just a standard warrior class dwelling with basic furnishings and few luxuries. But it was theirs. It was where they'd brought Kakarot home from the medical center, where Jin had sung him to sleep, where Bardock had first held his son and felt something he'd never experienced before. The need to protect something more than he needed to fight. "Ready?" he asked. Jin nodded, adjusting Kakarot in the sling across her chest. The baby was awake but quiet, as if he sensed the tension around him. They slipped out of their home and into the growing darkness. The tech district was on the other side of the city, and they'd have to move carefully to avoid being seen. Bardock led the way, using his knowledge of patrol routes and shift schedules to keep them in the shadows. The streets of planet Vegeta looked the same as always, rough stone buildings, Saiyans going about their evening routines, the occasional group of warriors heading home from training or missions. Normal. Peaceful in the way that a society built entirely around organized violence could be peaceful. None of them knew they were living their last day. As they moved through the city, Bardock found himself memorizing details he'd never paid attention to before. The way the double moons cast strange shadows on the buildings, the sound of Saiyan children playing war games in the courtyards, the smell of cooking meat drifting from family quarters, it would all be gone soon. They reached the tech district just as the shift change began. Bardock watched from cover as the day guards handed off to the night crew, noting the brief moment when Hangar 7 would be unattended. "Now," he whispered. They moved quickly across the open space to the hangar. Bardock's hands shook slightly as he worked on the electronic lock, not from fear, but from the weight of what they were doing. Once they took this ship, there would be no going back. The lock clicked open. Inside Hangar 7, the prototype ship sat like a sleeping predator. It was larger than a standard attack pod, but smaller than a transport ship, perfectly sized for a small family. The hull was marked with technical specifications and warning labels that Bardock didn't bother reading. All that mattered was whether it could get them far enough away to survive. "It's beautiful," Jin said softly, though Bardock thought it looked like every other Saiyan vessel, functional and intimidating. "Can you handle the startup sequence?" he asked, moving to the entrance ramp. "I think so. The controls look standard enough." As Jin strapped herself and Kakarot into the pilot's seat and began working through the pre-flight checklist, Bardock stood at the hangar entrance, keeping watch. His enhanced hearing picked up normal city sounds, nothing that suggested their escape had been discovered yet. But underneath the familiar noises, he heard something else. A low humming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, growing gradually louder. His blood went cold. He'd heard that sound in his visions. "Jin," he called, trying to keep his voice calm. "How much longer? 2 more minutes for the engines to warm up." The humming was getting louder. Other Saiyans were starting to notice it now. He could hear voices outside expressing confusion and concern. "We don't have 2 minutes," he said, moving to the control panel. "Start the launch sequence now. But if the engines aren't fully warmed, now, Jin," she must have heard the urgency in his voice because she immediately began the launch procedure. The ship shuddered to life, rising slowly from the hangar floor. Through the viewport, Bardock could see Saiyans gathering in the streets, all looking up at the sky where a massive shape was becoming visible through the atmosphere. Frieza's ship. They cleared the hangar just as alarms began sounding across the city. The ship climbed rapidly, its engines straining with the effort of escaping planet Vegeta's gravity well. In the pilot seat, Jin worked frantically to plot a course that would take them as far away as possible, as quickly as possible. "There," she said, pointing to the navigation display. "That system 7 jumps away inhabited planets. We can lose ourselves there." Bardock nodded, but his attention was fixed on the massive dreadnought that now dominated the sky above planet Vegeta. Even from their rapidly increasing distance, he could make out weapon systems that could crack a planet's core. In his arms, Kakarot began to fuss. The baby had been remarkably calm through their escape, but something was agitating him now. His power level, already unusually high for an infant, was starting to fluctuate. "It's okay, little one," Bardock murmured, trying to soothe his son. "We're safe now. The sky lit up. Even through the ship's filtered viewport, the energy blast that lanced down from Frieza's ship was blindingly bright. It struck planet Vegeta's surface like the fist of an angry god, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the planet began to die. The explosion started at the impact point and spread outward in a wave of destruction that consumed everything in its path. Cities, mountains, oceans, all of it disappearing into an expanding sphere of fire and debris. Within seconds, the world where Bardock had been born, where he'd met Jin, where Kakarot had taken his first breath, was nothing but cooling rock and scattered atmosphere. In the sudden silence that followed, Kakarot's crying seemed unnaturally loud. But as Bardock looked down at his son, he realized something was wrong. The baby's eyes had changed. Instead of black, they were now a brilliant blue-green, and his hair had shifted from black to golden. Power radiated from the infant in waves, causing the ship's instruments to flicker and spark. The hull groaned under stress it wasn't designed to handle. Bardock, Jin's voice was tight with panic. His power level, it's off the charts. I know, Bardock fought to maintain control as the ship bucked and shuddered around them. Kakarot's transformation was threatening to tear them apart from the inside. But as he held his son closer, speaking in soft, soothing tones, the baby's power began to stabilize. The golden hair faded back to black, the blue-green eyes returned to their normal dark color, and the dangerous energy fluctuations settled into a more manageable rhythm. How did he? Jin stared at their son in wonder and concern. I don't know, Bardock admitted, but he's not normal, Jin. Even for a Saiyan, he's not normal. They sat in silence for a moment, processing what they'd witnessed. Behind them, the debris field that had once been planet Vegeta continued to expand into space, carrying with it the scattered remains of their entire civilization. What do we do now? Jin asked quietly. Bardock looked at his family, his mate, who had trusted him enough to abandon everything she'd ever known, and his son, who had just demonstrated power that should have been impossible for an infant. They were alone in a hostile galaxy, with no home to return to and no idea what the future held. But they were alive. They were together, and maybe that was enough. We find somewhere safe, he said finally. Somewhere we can raise Kakarot to be better than we were, better than any Saiyan has ever been. Better how? Bardock thought about the visions he'd been having, about the destruction he'd witnessed, about the cycle of violence that had defined Saiyan culture for generations. Maybe it was time for something different, stronger, he said, but not just in body, in spirit, in purpose. He looked down at Kakarot, who had finally settled into peaceful sleep. The Saiyans are gone, Jin. But maybe what comes next doesn't have to be the same as what came before. Jin reached over and touched his hand. Where do we start? Bardock pulled up the star charts on the navigation display, looking for systems far from Frieza's influence, places where a small family might disappear and build a new life. Wherever this ship takes us, he said, and we figure it out from there. As their stolen ship jumped into hyperspace, carrying them away from everything they'd ever known toward an uncertain future, Bardock allowed himself one last look at the view screen. The debris field that had been planet Vegeta was already fading into the distance, just another collection of rocks in the vast emptiness of space. But in his arms, Kakarot slept peacefully, unaware that he was now one of the last of his kind, unaware of the power that coursed through his tiny body, unaware of the destiny that awaited him among the stars. Whatever that destiny turned out to be, Bardock was determined that his son would face it with family at his side. The Saiyans were gone, but the bonds between a parent and child, those were eternal. Those were worth fighting for. Those were worth living for. 3 years had passed since the night sky had swallowed their world whole. Kakarot, though the Yardratians had taken to calling him Goku after mishearing his name, sat cross-legged in the morning grass, watching his father demonstrate the proper stance for a basic energy attack. The boy's dark hair stuck up in all directions despite Jin's attempts to tame it, and his tail swished back and forth with barely contained excitement. Remember, Bardock said, positioning his hands carefully, Kai flows from the center of your being outward. Don't force it, guide it. Like water through a pipe, Goku asked, mimicking his father's hand position with the serious concentration that only small children could manage. Exactly like that, Bardock smiled despite himself. The boy had a way of understanding concepts that should have been beyond his years, breaking them down into simple comparisons that somehow made perfect sense. A soft blue light began to gather between Bardock's palms. Feel the energy, don't just see it. What does it tell you? Goku closed his eyes, his small face scrunched in concentration. It feels warm, like when Mama makes soup on cold days, and it's moving but not fast. Like it's dancing. Bardock's hands faltered slightly, the energy dissipating. He'd been training Saiyans for years before Kakarot was born, and none of them had ever described ki like soup and dancing. Most warriors talked about power, force, domination. Leave it to his son to find poetry in combat techniques. That's good, he said finally. Now you try. Goku opened his eyes and held out his hands, tongue poking out slightly in concentration. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a tiny spark of white light flickered between his palms, no bigger than a firefly. I did it! Goku bounced excitedly, the light disappearing as his concentration broke. Did you see, Papa? I made light, I saw. Bardock ruffled his son's wild hair. Practice that every day and soon you'll be making bigger lights. How big? Big enough to protect the people you care about. Goku considered this with the gravity that 3-year-olds brought to important matters. Will I be able to protect you and Mama? Something tight squeezed in Bardock's chest. Someday if you want to, but right now it's our job to protect you. They were interrupted by approaching footsteps. Paibara, the Yardratian elder who had first welcomed them to this world, emerged from the tree line with his usual serene smile. His pink skin had the texture of aged leather, and his large eyes held the kind of wisdom that came from centuries of meditation and peace. Good morning, little Goku, Paibara said in his melodic voice. I trust your training goes well. I made light, Elder Paibara. Goku scrambled to his feet and attempted to recreate his earlier success. This time, the spark was slightly larger and lasted a few seconds longer. Impressive progress, Paibara said, though his eyes were on Bardock. Might I speak with you privately? Bardock felt his shoulders tense. Private conversations with Paibara usually meant either very good news or very bad news, and good news had been in short supply lately. Goku, go find your mother, he said. Tell her it's almost time for language lessons. The boy nodded and scampered off toward their small house, his tail bouncing behind him. Bardock watched him go, marveling as he did every day at how easily his son had adapted to life on Yardrat. The boy played with Yardratian children as if species differences meant nothing, helped Jin tend their small garden without complaint, and treated everyone he met with a natural kindness that certainly didn't come from Saiyan genetics. He grows strong, Paibara observed, following Bardock's gaze. Too strong, maybe. Bardock turned to face the elder. What did you want to discuss? Our scouts detected ships in the outer system yesterday. 3 vessels, configuration unknown, conducting what appeared to be systematic searches of inhabited worlds. Bardock's blood went cold. Frieza's people, most likely. They departed after several hours, but Paibara paused, choosing his words carefully. It may be wise to prepare for the possibility that your presence here has been discovered. 3 years. They'd had 3 peaceful years to build something resembling a normal life, and now the shadow of their past was catching up with them again. Bardock thought of Goku playing with his Yardratian friends, of Jin humming while she cooked, of the quiet evenings when they'd sit together and pretend they were just an ordinary family on an ordinary world. How long do we have? He asked. Unknown. Perhaps they found no trace of you and will not return. Perhaps they will be back tomorrow with a full invasion force. Paibara's expression remained calm, but Bardock caught the underlying tension. I wanted you to know so that you could make whatever preparations you deem necessary. Bardock nodded grimly. He'd been hoping this day would never come, but he'd never stopped planning for it. Their ship was maintained and ready for immediate departure. They kept emergency supplies packed and hidden. He'd even scouted potential hiding places in Yardrat's mountainous regions, though he knew that would only buy them time. Thank you for the warning, he said. There is something else. Paibara hesitated, which was unusual for him. The council has been discussing your family situation. If you decide to stay and fight rather than flee, you would not stand alone. What do you mean? Yardrat has been peaceful for generations, but we are not defenseless. Many of us feel that your family has brought more good to our world than trouble. If Frieza's forces come for you, they come for all of us. Bardock stared at the elder. You're talking about war. Your people don't know war, Paibara. You don't understand what you're offering. Perhaps not, but we understand loyalty. We understand that some things are worth fighting for. Paibara's large eyes met Bardock's without flinching. Your son plays with our children. Your mate tends our sick. You have shared your knowledge freely and asked for nothing in return. By our customs, that makes you family. The weight of unexpected emotion hit Bardock like a physical blow. Family. When was the last time anyone besides Jin had used that word about him? When was the last time he'd belonged somewhere? He cleared his throat. I need to discuss this with Jin. Of course. But know that whatever you decide, you have friends here. As Paibara walked away, Bardock remained in the training clearing, staring at the scorch marks in the grass where he'd been teaching his son to harness destructive energy. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, on a world dedicated to peace and spiritual development, teaching a 3-year-old how to fight. But maybe that wasn't entirely wrong. Maybe the key was teaching Goku not just how to fight, but when to fight, and more importantly, what to fight for. He found Jin and Goku in their kitchen, working through the daily language lesson. Jin had insisted from the beginning that their son learn proper Saiyan, despite having no other Saiyans to speak it with. He should know where he comes from, she'd said, and Bardock had agreed. Papa, Goku looked up from the data pad displaying Saiyan characters. Mama taught me a new word. Kazoku means family. That's right, Bardock said, settling into his chair at their small table. He caught Jin's eye and nodded toward the door. She understood immediately. Goku, why don't you practice writing those characters while Papa and I check on the garden? Once they were outside and out of earshot, Bardock relayed his conversation with Paibara. Jin listened without interruption, her face growing more troubled with each detail. How sure are we that it was Frieza's people? She asked when he finished. Sure enough. Paibara's scouts are good at their job, and the council really offered to fight alongside us. They did. Bardock ran a hand through his hair. I never expected that. On planet Vegeta, if someone brought trouble to your door, you'd throw them out to face it alone. This isn't planet Vegeta, Jin said quietly. These people, they're different. Better, maybe, better enough to die for us. It was a harsh question, but a necessary one. Bardock had seen what Frieza's forces could do to peaceful worlds. The Yardratians were powerful in their own way, masters of techniques that could be incredibly useful in combat, but they had no experience with warfare. They didn't understand the ruthless efficiency of professional killers. Maybe that's not the right question, Jin said after a moment. Maybe the question is whether we're worth dying for. What do you mean? Look at what we've built here, Bardock. Look at our son. She gestured toward the house where they could hear Goku practicing his writing, occasionally calling out excitedly when he got a character right. 3 years ago, we were just refugees. Now we're part of something. Goku has friends, teachers, a whole community that cares about him. When was the last time any Saiyan could say that? Bardock considered this. She was right, of course. On planet Vegeta, children were evaluated for their fighting potential and assigned to appropriate training programs. Weakness was culled, strength was exploited, and personal bonds were seen as potential liabilities. The idea of a whole community coming together to protect one family would have been laughable. So what are you saying? We stay and fight. I'm saying we have something worth fighting for. And maybe, for once, we don't have to fight alone. That evening, after Goku had gone to bed, Bardock sat on their small porch and watched the twin moons rise over Yardrat's peaceful landscape. Somewhere out there, Frieza's scouts were probably analyzing their data, deciding whether this quiet world warranted further investigation. In a few days or weeks, ships might come out of hyperspace with enough firepower to crack continents. But for now, there was silence. And in that silence, he could hear his son breathing peacefully in the next room, could feel Jin's presence beside him, could sense the gentle pulse of life from the Yardratian settlement nearby. Papa, Goku's sleepy voice came from the doorway. I had a dream. What kind of dream? Jin asked, moving to scoop him up. There were bad people coming in big ships. But we weren't scared because we had friends helping us. Goku yawned and settled into his mother's lap. And I was bigger, and I could make really big lights to keep everyone safe. Bardock and Jin exchanged glances over their son's head. 3 years old and he was already having visions, or was it just a child's way of processing the tension he sensed around him? Dreams can't hurt you, Jin said softly, stroking Goku's wild hair. I know. And this wasn't a scary dream. It was. Goku paused, searching for the right word. It was like the stories you tell me about brave Saiyans, except the brave Saiyans weren't fighting to conquer things. They were fighting to protect things. What kinds of things? Bardock found himself asking. Important things, family things. Goku's eyes were drifting closed again. The things that make you feel warm inside like Ki, but bigger. As Jin carried their son back to bed, Bardock remained on the porch, thinking about what the boy had said. Fighting to protect rather than conquer. It was such a simple concept, but it went against everything Saiyan culture had taught him. Maybe that was exactly what they needed. When Jin returned, she settled back into her chair and took his hand. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that maybe our son understands something we're still learning, Bardock said. And I'm thinking that if Frieza's people do come back, they're going to find out what happens when you threaten a Saiyan's family. And if they don't come back, Bardock squeezed her hand and looked out at the peaceful landscape they'd come to call home. Then we keep doing what we've been doing. We raise our son. We learn from our neighbors. We try to be better than we were. Better how? It was the same question she'd asked 3 years ago as they'd fled their dying world. This time he had a better answer. Stronger where it matters, kinder where it counts, and ready to fight for the things that actually matter. In the distance, one of the Yardration children called out to his parents, probably wanting a drink of water or one more story before sleep. Normal sounds of a normal evening on a normal world where families tuck their children into bed without worrying about invasion fleets or planetary destruction. It was worth protecting, all of it. The wooden training dummy exploded into splinters. 6-year-old Goku stood frozen in the aftermath, staring at the scattered remains of what had been a perfectly good practice target just moments before. His small fist was still extended, wisps of energy dissipating from his knuckles, and his face showed the kind of horrified surprise that only came from vastly underestimating your own strength. "I didn't mean to hit it that hard," he said in a small voice. Bardock sighed and walked over to examine the wreckage. The dummy had been reinforced with metal supports specifically to withstand Saiyan training, but Goku's punch had gone right through everything like it was made of paper. At 6 years old, his son was already stronger than most adult Saiyan warriors had been. "That's the third one this month," Bardock observed, not unkindly. "What were you thinking about when you threw that punch?" Goku's tail drooped. "Zenny got hurt yesterday playing with the older kids. They were being mean to him because he's smaller. I was thinking about how mad that made me feel." There it was. Emotional power fluctuations had always been a Saiyan trait, but most warriors learned to channel anger into controlled aggression. Goku seemed to work in reverse. The madder he got about injustice, the less control he had over his strength. "Anger can make you stronger," Bardock said, kneeling down to his son's level. "But uncontrolled strength is just destruction. If you'd been fighting a real enemy instead of a training dummy, what would have happened?" "I would have won," Goku suggested hopefully. "Maybe. Or maybe you would have used so much power that you hurt innocent people nearby." "Power without control is destruction, Goku. Control without purpose is useless. You need both." Goku nodded solemnly, though Bardock could tell he was still processing what that actually meant. 6 was young to be grappling with concepts like proportional response and collateral damage, but then again, 6 was also young to be accidentally vaporizing reinforced training equipment. "Come on," Bardock said, standing up. "Let's go see if your mother needs help in the healing center. Maybe watching her work will teach you something about using power constructively." They found Jin in the Yardration medical facility, a serene building that looked more like a temple than a hospital. She was working with Jocko, one of the local healers, tending to a young Yardration who had fallen from a tree and broken his arm. "Hold still, Denti," Jin said softly, her hands glowing with a warm, golden light. "This might feel strange, but it won't hurt." Goku watched in fascination as his mother's ki worked differently than his father's or his own. Where their energy was sharp and precise, built for combat applications, hers flowed like water, soothing and restorative. The Yardration child's arm was healing visibly, broken bone knitting back together under her gentle touch. "How do you do that, Mama?" Goku whispered. "Same way you break things," Jin said without looking up from her work. Kai responds to intent. When you want to destroy, it becomes destructive. When you want to heal, it becomes healing energy. It's all about what you're trying to accomplish. But how do you want both? What if someone is hurting people and you need to stop them, but you don't want to hurt them? Jocko, the Yardration healer, looked up with interest. "An excellent question, young one. What do you think the answer might be?" Goku scrunched up his face in concentration. You hurt them just enough to make them stop, but not enough to really hurt them. That," said a new voice from the doorway, "is one of the most difficult skills a warrior can master." They turned to see Paibara entering the healing center, his usual serene expression tinged with something that might have been concern. "Elder Paibara," Bardock said, immediately alert. "Is something wrong?" "Perhaps. Our long-range sensors have detected ships entering the outer system, not scouts this time, a full raiding party. Pirates from the look of their vessels." Bardock felt his jaw tighten. Pirates were usually less systematic than Frieza's forces, but they could be just as dangerous to civilian populations. Worse, they tended to be unpredictable. "How many ships?" he asked. 5 medium-class vessels, enough to cause significant trouble if they reach the surface. "Papa," Goku said quietly, tugging on Bardock's armor, "are they the bad people from my dreams?" "Different bad people," Bardock said. "But yes, they're coming here to hurt people. Then we have to stop them." There was something in his son's voice that made Bardock look down sharply. Goku's expression had changed. The usual cheerful innocence was still there, but underneath it was something harder. Something that looked disturbingly like Saiyan battle instinct. "We have to stop them," Goku repeated more firmly this time. "No," Bardock said immediately. "You're 6 years old, Goku. This isn't your fight, but they're going to hurt our friends. And that's terrible, but you're not ready for this kind of battle. You can barely control your strength against training dummies. What happens if you lose control against living opponents? Goku's face fell, but before he could respond, alarms began sounding across the settlement. The pirates had apparently decided not to bother with negotiations. The council is mobilizing our defenses, Paibara said, his calm finally cracking slightly. But we could use your expertise, Bardock. You understand warfare in ways we do not. Bardock nodded grimly. Jin, take Goku to the emergency shelters. I'm not hiding in a shelter, Goku protested. I want to help. You want to help, then stay safe so I don't have to worry about protecting you while I'm fighting. Bardock's voice had the hard edge of command that came naturally to former Saiyan warriors. That's an order. For a moment, father and son stared at each other. Then Goku's shoulders slumped in defeat. Yes, Papa. As Bardock headed toward the settlement's defensive positions, he tried not to think about the hurt in his son's eyes. The boy wanted to help, wanted to protect people, and those were admirable instincts. But wanting to help and being able to help safely were two very different things. The pirate attack, when it came, was swift and brutal. Their ships landed in the settlement's central square, disgorging armed raiders who immediately began terrorizing the civilian population. The Yardratians fought back with their mastery of energy manipulation and instant movement, but they lacked the ruthless efficiency that came with a lifetime of warfare. Bardock found himself in the strange position of trying to coordinate a defense while also trying to minimize casualties on both sides. These weren't Frieza's elite soldiers. They were mostly desperate beings from various species, probably driven to piracy by circumstances beyond their control. That didn't make them less dangerous, but it did make him reluctant to simply slaughter them all. The balance was working, barely, until he heard Jin scream. The sound cut through the noise of battle like a blade. Bardock spun toward the source and saw smoke rising from the direction of the emergency shelters. His blood went cold. He found the shelter's entrance blown apart, debris scattered everywhere. A group of pirates had apparently decided to check for valuables or hostages in the supposedly safe areas. Most of the Yardratian civilians had been herded into a tight group, with armed raiders keeping them covered while their leader searched through the wreckage. Jin was on the ground, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Standing protectively in front of her was Goku. 6 years old, barely coming up to the pirates' waists, but standing firm between his mother and 3 armed raiders. His small fists were clenched, energy crackling around them in barely controlled bursts. "Move, kid," the lead pirate snarled, pointing a blaster at Goku's chest. "I don't want to hurt you, but I will." "No," Goku said simply. "You hurt my mama, I won't let you hurt anyone else." "Goku," Jin called weakly, trying to sit up. "Don't listen to your mother, boy," the pirate said. "This is grown-up business." "Grown-ups shouldn't hurt people who can't fight back," Goku replied. His power level was rising, but there was something different about it. Instead of the wild fluctuations Bardock was used to seeing, this felt controlled, focused. The pirate raised his weapon. "Last chance," Goku moved. Bardock had seen Saiyan speed before, but this was something else entirely. His son became a blur of motion, crossing the distance between himself and the pirates in an eye blink. But instead of the devastating attacks Bardock expected, Goku's strikes were precisely calibrated. A nerve strike to disable the leader's weapon arm, a pressure point hit that dropped the second pirate unconscious without permanent damage. The third raider tried to flee and found himself tripped by a perfectly placed energy blast that knocked him down but didn't seriously injure him. In less than 10 seconds, 3 armed pirates were neutralized by a 6-year-old who had never been in a real fight before. Bardock reached the scene just as his son was helping Jin to her feet. "I'm okay, Papa," Goku said, though he was shaking slightly from adrenaline. "I didn't hurt them too much, did I? I tried to just make them stop." Bardock looked at the 3 pirates, all alive, all breathing, all likely to recover fully from their injuries. The kind of precise, non-lethal takedown that most warriors couldn't manage after years of training. "How did you know how to do that?" he asked. "I watched Mama healing people," Goku said. "She showed me where the energy points are, the places where ki flows through the body. I figured if I could disrupt them just a little bit." "You turned healing techniques into combat applications," Bardock said slowly. "I didn't want to kill them," Goku said seriously. "They were doing bad things, but Mama always says that everyone deserves a chance to choose better. Dead people can't choose better." Looking at his son, this small, earnest child who had just revolutionized Bardock's understanding of combat philosophy, he felt something shift in his chest. Pride, yes, but more than that. Hope. Maybe there was a different way to be strong. Maybe Saiyan power didn't have to mean Saiyan brutality. You did good, son, he said finally. But next time, wait for backup. Goku grinned, the serious warrior expression fading back into childish enthusiasm. Does this mean I can help with training the other kids? Zenny asked if I could show him how to make key lights, and I think he's almost ready. Bardock looked at Jin, who was smiling despite her injury. What do you think? Is he ready for that kind of responsibility? I think, Jin said, that our son just proved he understands something about power that took us years to learn. Maybe it's time we started learning from him. As they walked back toward the settlement, pirates in custody and the immediate danger past, Bardock found himself thinking about the future. Goku was growing stronger every day, that much was obvious. But more importantly, he was growing wiser. Maybe that combination, Saiyan strength guided by genuine wisdom, was exactly what the galaxy needed. Maybe it was exactly what they'd been meant to create all along. The ship came down hard. Goku looked up from his meditation practice as the sound of screaming engines and tearing metal echoed across Yardrat's peaceful morning sky. Whatever was up there wasn't landing, it was crashing, and from the sound of it, barely under control. That's a Saiyan attack pod, Bardock said grimly, shading his eyes to track the falling craft. After 9 years on Yardrat, he'd almost forgotten what those engines sounded like. The pod impacted in the forest about 2 miles from the settlement, sending a column of smoke and debris into the air. Goku was already moving before his father gave the order, his 9-year-old legs carrying him toward the crash site with the kind of speed that still surprised the Yardratians. "Goku, wait!" Bardock called, but his son was already disappearing into the tree line. By the time Bardock and several Yardratian rescue teams reached the impact crater, Goku was kneeling beside the smoking wreckage of the attack pod, trying to pry open the damaged hatch with his bare hands. "There's someone inside," Goku called over his shoulder. "He's hurt bad, but he's alive." "Stand back," Bardock ordered, moving to help with the hatch. The metal was warped and partially melted, but between the two of them, they managed to tear it open. The Saiyan inside was older than Goku, maybe 16 or 17, with long dark hair and armor that had seen recent combat. His power level was substantial, higher than most adult Saiyans had been, but he was unconscious and bleeding from multiple wounds. Raditz, Bardock breathed, recognizing his older son despite the years that had passed. "You know him?" Goku asked, already moving to help lift the injured teenager from the pod. "He's your brother," the words hit Goku like a physical blow. His brother, he had a brother, all these years, and his parents had never mentioned. "Why didn't you tell me?" Goku asked as they carefully moved Raditz toward the waiting medical team. "Because we thought he was dead," Bardock said quietly. "When planet Vegeta was destroyed, we assumed everyone else died with it." But as they carried Raditz back to the settlement, Bardock found himself wondering if that assumption had been wishful thinking. Because if Raditz had survived, if there were other Saiyans still out there, what did that mean for the life they'd built here? Raditz woke up 3 days later in the Yardratian Healing Center, and his first words were not what anyone expected. "What the hell happened to this place?" he snarled, trying to sit up despite his injuries. "Where are the conquest banners, the battle trophies? This looks like some kind of meditation retreat." "It is a meditation retreat," Jin said gently, moving to check his bandages. "Among other things, how are you feeling?" "Like I crash-landed on a planet full of weaklings." Raditz's eyes found Bardock across the room. "Father, I should have known you'd find the softest world in the galaxy to hide on." The casual contempt in his voice made Goku's tail bristle. "They're not weaklings," he said firmly. "The Yardratians are some of the strongest people I know." Raditz turned to look at him properly for the first time, and his expression shifted from contempt to confusion. "Who are you supposed to be?" "I'm Goku, your brother. My brother is Kakarot, and he's supposed to be a baby." "I am Kakarot," Goku said patiently. "Goku is just what the Yardratians call me. And I'm not a baby anymore." Raditz stared at him for a long moment, taking in the wild hair, the innocent expression, and the complete lack of Saiyan armor or battle scars. "This is what you've done to him," he said to Bardock. "This is how you've raised a Saiyan warrior." "I've raised him to be strong and kind," Bardock replied evenly, "and it's worked out pretty well so far." "Strong and kind," Raditz repeated mockingly. "Listen to yourself. You sound like one of these pink meditation freaks." "The pink meditation freaks saved your life," Goku pointed out. "Maybe you should thank them instead of insulting them." Raditz's eyes narrowed. "Are you lecturing me, little brother?" "I'm just saying that maybe you should try being nicer to people who helped you." "Nicer?" Raditz laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Do you have any idea what's happening out there?" Frieza's dead, the universe is in chaos, and every surviving Saiyan is either fighting for territory or running for their lives. And you want me to be nicer? Frieza's dead, Bardock leaned forward sharply. Killed by some Super Saiyan, apparently. Golden hair, massive power, took the bastard apart like he was nothing. Raditz's expression grew bitter. Course, it doesn't help the rest of us much. His lieutenants are carving up his territory. Everyone's looking for Saiyan survivors to either recruit or eliminate, and the galaxy's basically at war with itself. Goku absorbed this information with the serious expression he wore when processing difficult concepts. If Frieza's dead, doesn't that mean the bad things he did are over? Kid, when a tyrant dies, it doesn't end the tyranny. It just creates a power vacuum that gets filled with smaller tyrants. Raditz tried to sit up again, wincing at the movement. Which is why we need to get off this peaceful paradise and find somewhere we can actually build some real power. This is real power, Goku said, gesturing around the healing center. Look around you, Raditz. Everyone here is safe, happy, working together. They've got techniques that could probably beat anything Frieza ever had. Techniques like what? Advanced flower arranging? Like this. Goku disappeared. For a moment, the room was empty except for Bardock, Gine, and Raditz. Then Goku reappeared on the other side of the bed, moving so fast that even Raditz's trained eyes couldn't track the movement. Instant transmission, Goku said simply. I'm still learning it, but Elder Paibara says I'm making good progress. Raditz stared at him. You can teleport, sort of. It's more like moving through space really, really fast. But yeah, Goku demonstrated again, this time appearing right next to Raditz's bed. The Yardrations taught me. Along with energy healing, advanced ki manipulation, and about a dozen other techniques that Planet Vegeta never developed. Planet Vegeta never developed them because they're not combat techniques. Everything's a combat technique if you use it right, Goku said, with the kind of casual confidence that came from years of creative training. Watch, he held out his hand and healing energy began to gather around his palm, the same warm, golden light their mother used. But as Raditz watched, the energy shifted, becoming more focused, more intense. Healing energy finds nerve clusters and energy pathways in the body, Goku explained. If you reverse the flow, he touched Raditz's arm, and every muscle in the older Saiyan's body suddenly locked up in paralysis. Not painful, not damaging, but completely immobilizing. You can shut down an opponent without hurting them, Goku finished, releasing the technique. Raditz slumped back onto the bed, able to move again but clearly shaken. How did you? Raditz started, then stopped. That shouldn't be possible. Lots of things shouldn't be possible until someone figures out how to do them. Goku settled into the chair beside the bed. The Yardrations have been developing techniques like this for thousands of years. They just never had to use them for fighting before. And you think that makes you stronger than a real Saiyan warrior? There was challenge in Raditz's voice, the kind of casual aggression that Goku had learned to recognize in the few off-world visitors they'd encountered over the years. He'd seen it before and he'd never liked it. I think it makes me different than a traditional Saiyan warrior, Goku said carefully. Whether that's stronger or not, I guess that depends on what you mean by strong. I mean combat power. I mean the ability to destroy your enemies before they destroy you. I mean survival in a galaxy that wants to kill everything with Saiyan blood. And I mean the ability to protect people without becoming the thing they need protection from. The two brothers stared at each other across the small hospital bed, and Bardock could see the fundamental difference in their worldviews playing out in real time. Raditz saw strength as the ability to inflict damage. Goku saw it as the ability to prevent damage from being necessary in the first place. You're soft, Raditz said finally, both of you. Living on this peaceful little world, playing house with aliens, pretending that power doesn't matter. Do you have any idea what the real universe is like? Do you have any idea what this universe could be like? Goku countered. Everyone you've described, the tyrants, the survivors, the people fighting over territory, they're all doing exactly what Saiyans have always done. Fight, conquer, destroy, repeat. How's that working out for our people? Our people are dead. No, they're not. We're here, you're here. There are others, apparently. But we keep acting like the only way to honor Saiyan heritage is to repeat the same mistakes that got our planet destroyed in the first place. Raditz was quiet for a moment, processing this. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, more uncertain. So what are you suggesting? That we just give up being Saiyans? I'm suggesting that maybe being Saiyan doesn't have to mean what it used to mean, Goku said. Maybe we can keep the strength and the pride and lose the cruelty and the conquest. That's not how evolution works, little brother. The strong survive, the weak get eliminated. It's that simple, is it? Goku stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the Yardration settlement. Because what I see out there is a whole society of people who chose cooperation over competition, development over domination. And they've been thriving for thousands of years, while civilizations like ours burn themselves out in a few generations. Raditz followed his gaze, seeing the peaceful interactions between Yardrations going about their daily business. Adults teaching children, traders sharing resources fairly, healers tending to anyone who needed help regardless of their ability to pay. It won't last, he said, but there was less conviction in his voice now. Something will come along that's stronger, more aggressive, and when it does, all this peace and cooperation won't mean anything. Something like Frieza? Goku asked quietly. Yeah, something like Frieza. Frieza came here once. His scouts anyway, the Yardrations fought them off. Raditz turned to stare at him. What? About 6 years ago, a reconnaissance force showed up, demanding tribute and threatening to call in the full fleet if they didn't get compliance. Goku's expression grew thoughtful. The Yardrations used their teleportation techniques to board the ships, disabled the crews with non-lethal force, and sent them back to Frieza with a message that this world was under protection. And Frieza just accepted that. Apparently he decided this sector wasn't worth the resources it would take to conquer, especially since the Yardrations made it clear they had allies who could make his life very complicated. Raditz absorbed this information slowly. What allies? Goku grinned. Us. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Finally, Raditz spoke. You're telling me that you scared off Frieza's forces with bluffs and non-violent resistance. I'm telling you that sometimes the threat of violence is more effective than violence itself, especially when your opponents can't predict exactly what you're capable of. Raditz was quiet for a long time after that, staring out the window at the alien society that had somehow managed to survive and thrive in a galaxy full of predators. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, less harsh, more genuinely curious. How strong are you, Goku? Strong enough, Goku said simply. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters. Goku turned back to face his brother. I'm strong enough to protect the people I care about. I'm strong enough to stop bullies without becoming one myself. I'm strong enough to choose mercy when mercy is the right choice, and strong enough to choose force when force is necessary. And you learned all this from these meditation freaks. I learned it from everyone. Papa taught me combat techniques and tactical thinking. Mama taught me healing and emotional control. The Yardrations taught me advanced energy manipulation and spiritual discipline. Even the pirates and raiders we've dealt with over the years taught me things, mostly what not to become. Raditz considered this. And you think you can teach me? I think you can teach yourself if you want to learn. Goku settled back into his chair. The question is whether you want to keep being the kind of Saiyan that gets planets destroyed, or whether you want to try being the kind that gets planets protected. For the first time since waking up, Raditz smiled. It wasn't a nice smile, too sharp, too predatory, but there was genuine interest behind it. All right, little brother, he said, show me what you've got. Outside the healing center, Bardock and Gine exchanged glances. Think it'll work? Gine asked quietly. I think, Bardock said, that our boys are about to teach each other some very interesting lessons. In the distance, they could hear Goku explaining the basics of Yardration energy manipulation to his older brother, his patient voice mixing with Raditz's skeptical questions. It sounded like the beginning of either a beautiful friendship or a spectacular fight. Knowing their sons, it would probably be both. 3 years had changed everything. 12-year-old Goku ducked under Raditz's energy blast and countered with a combination strike that his older brother barely managed to block. The force of their sparring match was shaking the reinforced training ground that the Yardrations had built specifically for Saiyan practice sessions. Better, Raditz grunted, spinning away from Goku's follow-up attack. But you're still telegraphing your moves with your tail. Goku glanced down at his tail, which was indeed twitching in anticipation of his next strike. I can't help it. It has a mind of its own. Then give it something else to think about. Raditz's advice came with a demonstration, a feint to the left followed by a real attack from the right that caught Goku off guard and sent him tumbling across the training ground. But instead of staying down, Goku used the momentum to spring back to his feet, already launching his counterattack. The years had been good to both brothers. Raditz had grown into his role as Goku's training partner and had slowly, grudgingly, come to appreciate the Yardration approach to strength development. He still grumbled about soft philosophies, but he'd also learned healing techniques, meditation practices, and advanced energy control that made him a more complete fighter than he'd ever been. Goku, meanwhile, had shot up in height and filled out with the lean muscle of a natural athlete. His power level had increased dramatically, but more importantly, his control had improved to match it. He could regulate his strength precisely enough to spar with Yardration children without hurting them, or ramp it up to match Raditz's full power when necessary. "That's enough for today," Bardock called from the edge of the training ground. "Goku, you've got language lessons with your mother. Raditz, Elder Paibara wanted to see you about the advanced teleportation techniques." "Do I have to?" Raditz complained, though he was already powering down. "Those meditation exercises make my brain hurt." "Your brain hurts because you're actually using it," Goku said with a grin, dodging the half-hearted swipe Raditz aimed at his head. As his sons headed off to their respective lessons, Bardock remained in the training ground, staring up at Yardrat's peaceful sky. 3 years of relative quiet had lulled them all into a sense of security, but lately, he'd been having the old dreams again. Not the psychic visions that had saved them from planet Vegeta's destruction, but anxiety dreams about threats he couldn't quite identify. Maybe it was just paranoia. Maybe the sky exploded. 5 ships dropped out of hyperspace simultaneously, their hulls gleaming with the unmistakable design aesthetics of Frieza's empire. They were larger than the scout vessels that had probed the system years ago, and they moved with the coordinated precision of a military operation. Alarms began sounding across the Yardration settlement as the ships took up positions around the planet. Bardock's combat instincts kicked in immediately, analyzing threat vectors and defensive options even as his heart sank at the implications. They'd been found, citizens of Yardrat, an amplified voice boomed from the lead ship, speaking in the universal trade language. "This world has been selected for integration into the Frieza Empire. You have 1 hour to gather your tribute and prepare for inspection. Resistance will be met with planetary sterilization." Bardock was already running toward the settlement center, where the emergency protocols would be activating. As he ran, he saw Yardratians emerging from their homes and businesses, their usual serenity replaced by the tense alertness of people preparing for war. He found his family gathered in the council chambers, along with the Yardration leadership. Goku and Raditz were flanking their mother, both boys looking grim but determined. Paibara and the other elders were consulting star charts and tactical displays with the kind of focused intensity that came from having planned for this day for years. "Status report," Bardock demanded as he entered. 5 heavy cruisers, estimated crew of 200 each, Paibara replied without looking up from his displays. "They're maintaining orbital positions that give them complete fire coverage of the surface, standard Frieza Force intimidation tactics. Any sign they know we're here specifically? Unknown. This could be routine expansion or they could be hunting." Goku looked between his father and the elder. "What's the plan?" "The plan," said a new voice from the chamber entrance, "is surrender." Everyone turned to see Captain Ginyu striding into the room, flanked by 4 other figures in battle armor. The legendary Special Forces had apparently decided to handle this operation personally. "I know you're in here, Bardock," Ginyu continued conversationally. "My sensors picked up 3 very distinctive Saiyan power signatures the moment we entered the system. Did you really think you could hide from the Frieza Force forever?" Bardock stepped forward, placing himself between Ginyu and his family. "Ginyu, I should have known they'd send you eventually." "Oh, this isn't about you, old friend." "Well, not entirely." Jinyu's smile was predatory. "We're here on behalf of Lord Cooler, who has taken a particular interest in collecting surviving Saiyans, especially ones with unusual power readings." "Cooler?" Raditz tensed. "I thought Frieza's brother was dead. Reports of his death were greatly exaggerated, and he's very interested in meeting the Saiyan family that managed to escape planet Vegeta's destruction." Jinyu's eyes found Goku and lingered there. "Particularly the youngest one. Those power readings are quite impressive for a 12-year-old. "He's not going anywhere with you," Jin said firmly, moving to stand beside Bardock. "Oh, but he is, you all are. Cooler has big plans for rebuilding the Saiyan warrior program, and he needs breeding stock, willing participants." The casual way he said it, as if they were livestock to be collected, made something cold and dangerous settle in Bardock's chest. But before he could respond, Paibara stepped forward. "Captain Ginyu," the elder said with perfect calm, "I'm afraid we must decline your gracious offer. The Saiyan family is under our protection, as are all residents of Yardrat." Ginyu laughed. "Your protection? Old man, do you have any idea who you're talking to?" "I'm talking to someone who is about to discover why peaceful people make the most dangerous enemies." The words were barely out of Paibara's mouth when the chamber erupted into chaos. The Elder disappeared with the telltale pop of instant transmission, reappearing behind G's and striking a nerve cluster that dropped the red-skinned alien instantly. Around the chamber, other Yardratians were engaging Jinyu's remaining forces with techniques that turned their peaceful training into devastatingly effective combat applications. But Jinyu himself was faster and stronger than his subordinates. He weathered the initial assault and began fighting back with the kind of brutal efficiency that had made him legendary throughout the galaxy. "Impressive," he said, ducking under a teleporting strike from Paibara, but ultimately futile. He caught the Elder mid-teleport, somehow predicting exactly where he would appear, and landed a devastating blow that sent Paibara crashing into the chamber wall. "No," Goku moved without thinking, his power spiking as he launched himself at Jinyu. The captain caught him easily, one large hand wrapping around the boy's throat. "Feisty little thing, aren't you? Cooler's going to love you." That was when Raditz hit him. The older Saiyan had been quietly positioning himself during the fight, waiting for the right moment to strike. His attack was perfectly timed and utterly ruthless, combining traditional Saiyan combat techniques with the precision strikes he'd learned from Yardratian training. Jinyu staggered but didn't go down. Instead, he threw Goku aside and turned to face this new threat. "Two Saiyans for the price of one," he said with satisfaction. "This just keeps getting better." The fight that followed was unlike anything the Yardratians had ever witnessed. Raditz fought with a combination of Saiyan ferocity and tactical precision that pushed even Jinyu to his limits. But the captain of the Special Forces hadn't achieved his position through luck. He was stronger, more experienced, and utterly without mercy. Slowly, inevitably, he began to gain the upper hand. Goku picked himself up just in time to see Jinyu land a crushing blow that sent Raditz sprawling. His brother tried to get back up, blood streaming from a dozen wounds, but his legs wouldn't support him. "Raditz," Goku started forward, but Jinyu intercepted him with casual ease. "Your turn, boy. Let's see what all the fuss is about." What happened next would be debated by witnesses for years afterward. Some said Goku's power level simply exploded beyond anything they'd ever measured. Others claimed they felt something fundamental shift in the fabric of reality around him. But what everyone agreed on was the moment when Goku's hair turned gold. The transformation wasn't the wild, uncontrolled burst that Bardock had witnessed when his son was an infant. This was focused, purposeful, driven by a rage that was somehow both infinite and perfectly controlled. "You hurt my family," Goku said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "You threatened my friends. You came to my home and tried to take everything I care about." Jinyu took a step backward, his combat instincts finally recognizing a threat that might actually be dangerous. "That," Goku continued, his golden aura intensifying, "was a mistake. The battle that followed was less a fight than a demonstration of the difference between raw power and focused intent. Jinyu was strong, experienced, and utterly ruthless. But Goku was something entirely new, a Saiyan warrior whose strength was amplified by love rather than limited by hatred. Every blow he landed was calculated not just to defeat his opponent, but to protect everyone around them. Every movement was designed to minimize collateral damage while maximizing the message being sent. When it was over, Jinyu lay unconscious in the wreckage of the council chamber, alive but thoroughly defeated. His remaining forces had either fled or been subdued by the Yardratians, and the orbital ships were withdrawing to a respectful distance. Goku stood in the center of it all, his golden hair slowly fading back to black as his power level normalized. But the look in his eyes remained, the calm, implacable certainty of someone who had discovered exactly what they were capable of when pushed too far. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, turning to check on his family and friends. "We're fine," Bardock said, though his voice was hoarse with emotion. "But Goku, what you just did, I know." Goku looked down at his hands, still crackling with residual energy. "I felt it happening, like something inside me just opened up." "Super Saiyan," Raditz wheezed from where he was being tended by Jin. "The legends were true." "Maybe," Goku said, "but it doesn't matter what we call it. What matters is what we do with it." Paibara, battered but conscious, struggled to his feet with help from other Yardratians. "The orbital ships are still up there," he pointed out. "This victory may be temporary." "No," Goku said with quiet certainty. "They'll leave, and they'll spread the word that Yardrat is protected." "How can you be sure?" Goku smiled, and for a moment, he looked like the innocent child they'd raised rather than the legendary warrior he was becoming. "Because I asked them nicely." It took a moment for that to sink in. Then Bardock started laughing, deep belly laughs that seemed to release years of accumulated tension. "You asked them nicely? Well, I asked them nicely while glowing gold and standing over their defeated captain, Goku clarified. But yes, I explained that Yardrat was under my protection and that anyone who threatened it would have to answer to me personally. I think they found the argument persuasive. Over the next few hours, as the Frieza Force ships departed the system and the settlement began cleaning up the damage, the full implications of what had happened began to sink in. Goku had achieved the legendary transformation that most Saiyans only dreamed of. But more importantly, he'd done it not through selfish ambition or bloodthirsty rage, but through the desire to protect others. This changes everything, Bardock said quietly as they watched the last of the enemy ships disappear into hyperspace. Does it? Goku asked. We're still the same family. We still care about the same things, but now the galaxy knows where we are and what you're capable of. Goku considered this with the thoughtful expression he wore when processing complex problems. Maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. What do you mean? I mean maybe it's time to stop hiding. Goku looked around at the settlement they'd called home for over a decade, at the Yardratians who had welcomed them and stood by them, at his family who had given up everything to keep him safe. Maybe it's time to start standing up. Standing up how? I don't know yet, Goku admitted. But there are people out there who need help, good people who are being hurt by bullies like Jinyu and Cooler. And now I have the power to do something about it. Bardock felt a complex mix of pride and concern as he looked at his son. The boy had grown up so much in the past few hours, had taken his first real step toward becoming the legend the galaxy would remember. But legends, Bardock knew from experience, rarely lived quiet, peaceful lives. Whatever you decide, he said finally, we'll figure it out together, as a family. Goku smiled, the same warm, innocent expression he'd worn as a toddler learning his first key techniques. Together, he agreed, that's the only way it works. In the distance, Elder Paibara was addressing the assembled Yardratians, speaking about the day's events and what they meant for their world's future. But Bardock wasn't listening to the words. He was watching his sons, Raditz, bruised but grinning with fierce pride at his little brother's achievement. Goku, still glowing faintly with residual Super Saiyan energy, already planning how to use his new power responsibly. They'd come to Yardrat as refugees, survivors of a dead world with nothing but each other and a desperate hope for something better. Now they were something else entirely. Now they were legends in the making. And the galaxy was about to discover what happened when Saiyan power was guided by Saiyan love instead of Saiyan pride. It was going to be interesting. The stars looked different when you were homeless. 15-year-old Goku pressed his face against the viewport of their salvaged transport ship, watching another system drift past in the endless dance of hyperspace. 3 years had passed since they'd left Yardrat, and he still wasn't used to the feeling of not having a place to call home. Stop brooding, Raditz said from the pilot's seat, though his tone was gentler than it would have been in the old days. You're making the whole ship depressed. I'm not brooding, Goku protested. I'm thinking, same thing with you. Their ship, officially designated as a liberated Frieza Force transport vessel, but which they'd nicknamed New Dawn, had become their world over the past 3 years. Bardock had modified it extensively, turning the cargo bays into training rooms and the passenger quarters into something resembling a family home. It wasn't Yardrat, but it was theirs. Any word from our contacts in the vegan system? Bardock asked, emerging from the engine compartment with grease on his hands and concern in his voice. Still nothing, Raditz replied. Either they've gone dark for security reasons, or the slavers found them first, Goku finished grimly. The past 3 years had been an education in the galaxy's darker corners. After leaving Yardrat to avoid bringing more trouble to their adopted home, the family had discovered that the power vacuum left by Frieza's death had created opportunities for every petty tyrant and slave trader in known space. Entire systems were being carved up by warlords, peaceful worlds were being strip-mined for resources, and billions of innocent beings were suffering under the rule of whoever had the biggest guns. It was exactly the kind of situation that made Goku's Saiyan blood sing with the need to fight. But it was also exactly the kind of situation where rushing in without proper intelligence got good people killed. There, Jin called from the communications station. I'm picking up a distress signal from the 4th planet, automated beacon, but it's using the resistance code we've been teaching people. Bardock moved to check the readings over her shoulder. How old is the signal? 2 days, maybe 3, still within our response window. Could be a trap, Raditz pointed out, though he was already plotting an intercept course. The Empire's been getting better at mimicking resistance communications. Could be, Goku agreed, but if it's real and we don't respond, he didn't need to finish the thought. They'd all seen what happened to resistance cells that didn't get backup when they called for it. "Take us in," Bardock decided, "but keep us ready to jump out fast if things go bad." The fourth planet in the vegan system was a dusty, unremarkable world that wouldn't have rated a second glance from most travelers. But as they dropped out of hyperspace and began their approach, Goku could feel the wrongness of it even from orbit. His enhanced senses, sharpened by years of training and actual combat experience, picked up the psychic residue of fear and suffering that clung to the planet like a shroud. "Slave operation," he said with quiet certainty. "Big one. How can you tell?" Raditz asked, though he'd learned to trust his brother's intuitive assessments. "The planet feels hollow, like something vital has been drained out of it." Goku's hands clenched into fists. "How many people do you think they're holding down there?" "Sensors are picking up large population concentrations in 3 major cities," Jin reported from her station. "But the life signs are strange, too regular, too controlled." "Pacification drugs," Bardock said grimly, "keeps the slaves docile and manageable." The distress beacon led them to a hidden facility in the planet's northern polar region, where they found the remnants of a local resistance cell that had been trying to document the slave operation for months. Only 3 survivors remained out of an original group of 20, and they were in bad shape both physically and psychologically. "They've got over 1 million people in those processing centers," gasped Kira, the cell's leader, as Jin worked to heal her injuries. "Families torn apart, children separated from parents, whole communities broken down and sorted by market value." "Who's running the operation?" Bardock asked. "Commander Zarbon. He's using this as his personal recruitment center, taking the strongest for his military forces and selling the rest to whoever's willing to pay." Goku felt something cold and familiar settle in his chest. Zarbon. He remembered that name from the intelligence reports they'd intercepted over the years. One of Frieza's former lieutenants, now carving out his own little empire in the chaos following his master's death. "How many troops does he have?" Raditz was already thinking tactically. "Too many," Kira replied. "Maybe 10,000 soldiers plus automated defenses and orbital support. The resistance tried a direct assault 6 months ago. We lost 800 people and didn't even scratch their perimeter." "But you're still trying," Goku observed. "Why?" Kira looked at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering. "Because they have my daughter. They have everyone's children." The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of shared understanding. This wasn't just about military strategy or tactical considerations. This was about families being torn apart by people who saw other beings as commodities to be bought and sold. "We're going to help you," Goku said simply. "Goku," Bardock started, but his son cut him off. "We're going to help them," he repeated with quiet finality. "All of them. The resistance, the slaves, everyone." "Kid, there are 1 million people down there and only 4 of us up here," Raditz pointed out. "Even with your Super Saiyan power, the math doesn't work." Then we changed the math. Over the next week, they planned what would later be remembered as the vegan liberation, though Goku would always insist that it was a team effort rather than any individual heroics. The key insight came from Jin, who pointed out that slave operations depended on centralized control systems to manage their populations. "Take out the control centers and the whole system collapses," she said. "The slaves can free themselves if they're not being chemically suppressed." The plan that emerged was typically Saiyan in its audacity and typically Goku in its focus on minimizing civilian casualties. Raditz would use his mastery of Yardration teleportation techniques to infiltrate the control centers and disable the pacification systems. Bardock would lead a coordinated strike against the military installations to prevent reinforcements from interfering. Jin would coordinate with the surviving resistance cells to organize the evacuation once the slaves were free to move, and Goku would handle Zarbon personally. "You don't have to do this alone," Bardock said as they prepared for the operation. "Zarbon's not some minor enforcer. He's been one of the galaxy's most dangerous beings for decades." "I know," Goku replied, checking his equipment one final time, "but this is what the power is for, isn't it? To stop people like him from hurting people like them. And if you can't stop him," Goku's expression grew thoughtful, "then I'll find a way to anyway. That's what family taught me. You don't give up on people who need help just because it's difficult." The assault began at dawn, coordinated across multiple continents simultaneously. Raditz's teleportation strikes took out the control centers with surgical precision, his years of Yardration training allowing him to appear inside heavily defended facilities and disable their systems before the guards even knew he was there. Bardock's attacks on the military installations were more traditional but no less effective. His decades of combat experience, enhanced by advanced techniques learned from multiple worlds, made him a one-man army capable of taking on entire battalions. But it was Goku's confrontation with Zarbon that would be remembered by history. He found the commander in his personal fortress, a gleaming spire that rose from the center of the largest slave processing facility. Zarbon was exactly what Goku had expected, elegant, arrogant, and utterly without conscience regarding the suffering he'd caused. "So you're the famous Golden Warrior," Zarbon said as Goku walked into his throne room, stepping over the unconscious forms of dozens of guards. "I must admit I'm underwhelmed." "Are you?" Goku asked mildly, "because your security system seemed pretty whelmed." The fight that followed was broadcast across the planet by resistance cells who had managed to tap into Zarbon's own communication networks. Millions of slaves, their chemical suppression systems disabled, watched as a 15-year-old Saiyan faced down one of the galaxy's most feared tyrants. Zarbon was powerful, experienced, and utterly ruthless. His transformation into his reptilian combat form multiplied his already substantial abilities, and his centuries of experience in galactic warfare showed in every calculated strike. But Goku had something Zarbon had never encountered before, the ability to fight with perfect clarity of purpose. Every technique he used, every strategy he employed, was focused not on defeating his opponent, but on freeing the people Zarbon had enslaved. When he finally achieved his Super Saiyan transformation, golden light flooding the throne room, it wasn't driven by rage or pride. It was powered by the simple, unshakable determination to ensure that no child would be separated from their parents on his watch. The battle ended with Zarbon defeated but alive, his forces scattered, and over 1 million people free to return to their homes and families. "Why didn't you kill him?" Kira asked later, as they watched transport ships carrying freed slaves back to their home worlds. "Because dead people can't choose to be better," Goku replied, watching a family reunion taking place on the landing pad below. "And everyone deserves a chance to choose better. Even someone like Zarbon, especially someone like Zarbon. If he can change, then anyone can change." As they prepared to leave the vegan system, Goku found himself thinking about the past 3 years of nomadic life. They'd helped a lot of people, freed a lot of slaves, stopped a lot of tyrants. But they'd also made a lot of enemies, and their reputation was spreading throughout the galaxy. The Golden Warrior, people were calling him. Stories about the young Saiyan who fought for the oppressed were being told in a dozen languages across 50 star systems. Some of the stories were even accurate. "You're becoming famous," Raditz observed as they jumped to hyperspace, leaving another freed world behind them. "I'm becoming a target," Goku corrected. "Every warlord and tyrant in the galaxy is going to want to prove themselves by taking down the Golden Warrior." "Is that a problem?" Goku considered this as he watched the stars wheel past their viewport. Fame brought attention, and attention brought danger. But it also brought hope to people who had given up on the possibility that anyone cared about their suffering. "No," he said finally, "it's not a problem. It's an opportunity. Opportunity for what? To show people that there's another way. That strength doesn't have to mean cruelty, that power doesn't have to mean oppression." Goku's expression grew thoughtful. "The Saiyans were feared throughout the galaxy, right? What if instead of being feared, we could be trusted? That's a nice dream, little brother, but the galaxy's a harsh place. Then maybe it's time someone tried to make it a little less harsh." As their ship carried them toward their next mission, toward the next group of people who needed help, Goku found himself thinking about the future. Somewhere out there were other Saiyan survivors, making their own choices about what their heritage meant in a post-Frieza galaxy. Some, like Vegeta, were carving out new empires through conquest and intimidation. Others were probably just trying to survive, keeping their heads down and avoiding attention. But maybe there was a third option. Maybe there was a way to honor Saiyan strength while rejecting Saiyan cruelty. Maybe the galaxy's most feared warrior race could become its most trusted protectors. It was worth finding out. After all, he'd learned from the best teachers in the universe that the impossible was just another word for haven't figured out how yet. And he was very good at figuring things out. The attack came without warning, as the best attacks always did. 18-year-old Goku was in the ship's training bay, working through his morning forms, when every alarm on the new dawn started screaming at once. The familiar routine of combat preparation kicked in immediately, weapons systems charging, shields powering up, escape routes calculated. But something felt different about this threat. "Single bogey coming in fast," Raditz called from the bridge. "Power level that can't be right." "What's the reading?" Bardock demanded, already moving toward the weapons console. over 18,000. And climbing, Goku felt his blood go cold. In 5 years of fighting across the galaxy, they'd rarely encountered anyone with a power level above 10,000. 18,000 meant they were dealing with someone in Jinyu's league, or possibly stronger. Could be a scouter malfunction, Jin suggested hopefully. Could be, Bardock agreed, though his expression suggested he didn't believe it. Or it could be, the ship shuddered as something impacted their hull. Not weapons fire, something had actually landed on their ship while it was traveling through hyperspace, which should have been physically impossible. Hull breach in Cargo Bay 3, Raditz reported, his voice tight with disbelief. Whatever just boarded us came through the outer airlock like it was made of paper. Saiyan life sign, Jin added, checking her bioscanners. Definitely Saiyan. Goku was already moving, his instincts telling him that whoever had just forced their way onto his family's ship wasn't here for a friendly reunion. I'll handle it. Goku, wait, Bardock started, but his son was already disappearing through the access corridor toward the cargo bay. He found the intruder standing in the center of the damaged cargo bay, arms crossed, surveying the ship's interior with the kind of casual arrogance that spoke of absolute confidence in one's own superiority. The newcomer was roughly Goku's age, maybe slightly older, with distinctive flame-shaped black hair and royal blue armor that marked him as Saiyan elite. So, the stranger said without looking at Goku, "This is what passes for a Saiyan warrior ship these days." "Pathetic, you're trespassing," Goku said calmly, though he could feel his power level rising in response to the obvious threat. "State your business or get off my family's ship." The stranger turned then, and Goku found himself looking into eyes that burned with cold fire. "Your family's ship? How interesting. I am Prince Vegeta, heir to the Saiyan throne and the strongest warrior in the universe. And you?" He paused, studying Goku with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey. "You are Kakarot, the low-class whelp who has been making a mockery of Saiyan heritage across half the galaxy." "My name is Goku," Goku corrected mildly, "and I don't know what you mean about mockery." Vegeta's expression darkened. "Playing protector to weaklings, showing mercy to defeated enemies, calling yourself the Golden Warrior while refusing to conquer anything." His voice rose with each accusation. "You have turned the most feared warrior race in the galaxy into a joke." "Have I?" Goku asked, genuinely curious. "Because from where I'm standing, the Saiyan warrior race doesn't exist anymore. Planet Vegeta is gone, most of our people are dead, and the survivors are scattered across the galaxy trying to figure out what it means to be Saiyan in a universe that doesn't need conquerors anymore." "The universe will always need conquerors," Vegeta snarled, power flaring around him like a visible aura. "The strong rule, the weak serve, and Saiyans are the strongest beings who have ever existed. That is our heritage, that is our purpose." "Says who?" The simple question seemed to catch Vegeta off guard. "What? Says who?" Goku repeated. "Who decided that being strong means you have to rule over other people? Who decided that having power means you have to use it to hurt others? It is the natural order. It has always been the way. The natural order got our planet destroyed and our people exterminated," Goku pointed out. "Maybe it's time to try something different." Vegeta's response was immediate and violent. He launched himself across the cargo bay with speed that would have been invisible to most beings, his fist aimed directly at Goku's face with enough force to shatter mountains. Goku caught the punch with one hand. The impact sent shockwaves through the ship's hull, but Goku's feet remained planted firmly on the deck. Vegeta's eyes widened as he realized that his full-power strike had been stopped as casually as someone might catch a thrown ball. "Impossible," Vegeta breathed. "Your power level. It was only 12,000 when I arrived." "Power levels aren't everything," Goku said, still holding Vegeta's fist in his palm. "My father taught me that strength without purpose is just destruction. My mother taught me that real power comes from protecting the things you love. And my brother taught me that even the angriest heart can learn to fight for something better." "Sentimental garbage." Vegeta wrenched his hand free and leaped back, energy beginning to crackle around his body. "Let me show you what real Saiyan power looks like." The battle that followed was unlike anything Goku had experienced before. Vegeta was incredibly strong, faster than anyone Goku had fought except during his own Super Saiyan transformations, and possessed a fighting technique that spoke of years of elite training and actual combat experience. But more than that, Vegeta fought with a purity of purpose that was almost admirable. Every strike was aimed at proving his superiority, every technique was designed to demonstrate the gulf between a low-class warrior and Saiyan royalty. There was no hesitation, no doubt, no moment of uncertainty about what he was trying to accomplish. It was also completely wrong. "You're holding back," Vegeta accused as they broke apart after a particularly intense exchange. Fight me at full power. I am fighting at full power, Goku replied honestly. But I'm not trying to prove anything to you. I'm just trying to stop you from damaging my family's home. This is not your full power. Vegeta's aura flared brighter. I have heard the stories, the Golden Warrior, the Super Saiyan show me that transformation. Why? Because I am the Prince of all Saiyans. I am the legendary Super Saiyan. Not some low-class nobody who learned to glow. Goku studied Vegeta's face, seeing past the arrogance to the desperation underneath. You really believe that, don't you? That being royal makes you special. I am special. I am elite. You're scared. The words hit Vegeta like a physical blow. His attack pattern faltered for just a moment, and in that moment, Goku saw through to the truth that the prince had been hiding from himself. You're terrified that everything you were taught about Saiyan superiority was wrong, Goku continued, pressing his advantage. You're afraid that royal blood doesn't actually mean anything, that elite status is just words, that the only thing that separates you from a low-class warrior is the story you tell yourself about why you're better. Shut up! Vegeta's power exploded outward, his rage finally overwhelming his tactical control. I'll show you the difference between elite and trash. But rage without focus was just destruction, and Goku had been trained by masters who understood the difference between power and strength. As Vegeta's attacks became more aggressive, they also became more predictable, more wasteful, more vulnerable to the kind of precise counters that turned an opponent's strength against them. When Goku finally decided to end the fight, he did it with techniques that Vegeta had never seen before. Yardration precision strikes combined with Saiyan power levels, delivered with the kind of calm focus that came from knowing exactly what you were fighting for. Vegeta hit the deck hard, his royal armor cracked, and his legendary pride in shambles. Impossible, he whispered, staring up at Goku with something that might have been awe. You're nobody, you're nothing. How can a low-class warrior be stronger than the Prince of all Saiyans? Maybe, Goku said gently, extending a hand to help Vegeta up. The question isn't how I got stronger than you. Maybe the question is why you think being a prince should automatically make you stronger than anyone else. Vegeta stared at the offered hand for a long moment. You're not going to kill me. Why would I kill you? Your family, Vegeta's voice cracked slightly. I just tried to prove my superiority by beating you into submission. I insulted your heritage, invaded your ship, and attacked you without provocation. Yeah, Goku agreed cheerfully. Family does that sometimes. My brother and I used to fight all the time when he first showed up. Course, now he's one of my best friends and training partners. Your brother, Raditz. He had some pretty strong opinions about proper Saiyan behavior when he first arrived, too. Took him a while to understand that there might be more than one way to honor our heritage. Before Vegeta could respond, new alarms began sounding throughout the ship. This time, the threat was multiple contacts, closing fast from several directions. Frieza Force, Bardock's voice came over the intercom. Full squadron, looks like they were following our guest's energy signature. Cooler's people, Vegeta said grimly, accepting Goku's help to stand. They've been hunting me for months, they must have tracked me here. Why are they hunting you? Because I refuse to serve another tyrant, because I will not kneel to anyone who is not worthy of Saiyan loyalty. Vegeta's expression hardened. Because I killed the last 3 commanders who ordered me to bow. Goku felt a slow smile spread across his face. You know what? I think I might like you after all. The defense of the New Dawn that followed would later be remembered as the first time in recorded history that multiple Super Saiyans fought together in coordinated combat. Goku's golden transformation was soon matched by Vegeta's own, though the prince's version was driven more by fury and pride than by protective instinct. But it worked. Together, they carved through Cooler's assault squadron with the kind of devastating efficiency that reminded the galaxy why Saiyans had once been the most feared warriors in the universe. The difference was that this time, the fear was directed at people who deserved it. Impressive, Vegeta admitted afterward as they watched the surviving Frieza Force ships retreat into hyperspace. Your transformation is different from mine, different how, calmer, more controlled, like you're drawing power from something other than rage. I am, Goku said simply. Rage burns hot, but it burns out fast. Love burns longer. Vegeta was quiet for a moment, processing this. Love, you speak of love as if it were a combat technique. Isn't it? When someone threatens the people you care about, doesn't that make you stronger than you've ever been before? Vegeta paused, clearly struggling with concepts that didn't fit into his worldview. I have never had people I cared about, not in that way. You could, Goku said gently, if you wanted to. And what would that look like, a Saiyan prince fighting for? What? Peace, justice. The protection of weaklings, a Saiyan prince fighting for the things that actually matter. Family, friends, people who trust you to use your strength responsibly. Vegeta stared out at the stars visible through the cargo bay's damaged hull. Your family, they accepted your brother despite his initial hostility. It took time, Goku admitted, but yeah, Raditz is one of us now, has been for years. And they would accept me, despite what I am. Despite what I've done, they would if you wanted them to, but the question isn't whether they would accept you. The question is whether you're ready to accept that being Saiyan might mean something different than what you were taught. Vegeta was quiet for a long time after that. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, less arrogant, more uncertain. I need time to think about this, about what you've shown me today. Take all the time you need, Goku said. But remember, strength isn't about proving you're better than other people. It's about becoming better than you used to be. When Vegeta finally departed in his own ship, he carried with him more than just the memory of his first defeat at another Saiyan's hands. He carried the seed of possibility, the idea that maybe, just maybe, there was another way to be proud of what he was. Think he'll be back? Raditz asked as they watched the prince's ship disappear into hyperspace. Yeah, Goku said with certainty. He'll be back. Might take him a while to figure out what he really wants, but he'll be back. How can you be sure? Goku smiled, thinking about the look in Vegeta's eyes during their final conversation. Because for the first time in his life, someone offered him something more valuable than power or status. What's that? A chance to be part of something bigger than himself. As the New Dawn continued on its journey through the galaxy, carrying its crew toward their next mission of protection and liberation, Goku found himself thinking about the future. Somewhere out there, Vegeta was wrestling with concepts that challenged everything he'd ever believed about strength, honor, and what it meant to be Saiyan. It would be a difficult journey for the prince. But then again, the best journeys usually were. And when Vegeta finally found his way, when he finally understood that true Saiyan pride came from protecting others rather than dominating them, he would make an incredibly powerful ally. The galaxy could use more protectors, especially Saiyan ones. 20-year-old Goku stood at the edge of a cliff on Namek, staring down at the village that had been reduced to ash and crater marks 3 days ago. The Dragon Balls they'd come here seeking were gone, taken by whoever had slaughtered the peaceful Namekians, and the weight of arriving too late sat heavy on his chest. 43 villages, Raditz said quietly, landing beside him with a report from their aerial reconnaissance. All the same pattern: professional military assault, minimal resistance, total extermination. Any survivors? A few, scattered across the southern continent. But Goku, Raditz's voice was grim, they're all elders or children. Everyone of fighting age is dead. Goku closed his eyes, feeling the familiar surge of anger that came with witnessing senseless destruction. 7 years of fighting across the galaxy had shown him more atrocities than he cared to count, but the systematic genocide of an entire peaceful species still had the power to make his Saiyan blood burn. Who did this? Best guess, Cooler's people looking for the Dragon Balls. Intelligence suggests he's been collecting them from multiple worlds, trying to gather enough to make a wish. What kind of wish requires multiple sets of Dragon Balls? Before Raditz could answer, their ship's communication system crackled to life with Jin's voice. Boys, get back here, we've got incoming. The ship that dropped out of hyperspace was unlike anything in Goku's experience. Sleek and organic-looking, with energy readings that suggested technology far more advanced than anything the Frieza Force had ever fielded. It settled onto Namek's surface with the kind of graceful precision that spoke of pilots who knew exactly what they were doing. That's not a Frieza Force vessel, Bardock observed as they watched the landing from a safe distance. No kidding, Raditz muttered. Power readings are all over the place, multiple life signs, but they're weird. The ship's ramp extended and 7 figures emerged. Goku's enhanced senses immediately identified them as a mixed group, different species, different power levels, but moving with the coordinated purpose of a team that had worked together for years. The leader appeared to be human, or close to it, with spiky black hair and orange martial arts clothing. Behind him came a tall green figure with antennae, a small bald monk in similar orange robes, and several others whose power levels registered as surprisingly high for beings who didn't look like professional warriors. Earth fighters, Jin said with surprise, consulting her database. What are humans doing on Namek? Same thing we are, probably, Goku said, studying the group through their ship's sensors. Looking for Dragon Balls. The human in orange was clearly the group's primary fighter. His power level was substantial, and he moved with the confident grace of someone comfortable with violence when necessary. But it was the green figure that caught Goku's attention. Something about him felt familiar, like an echo of power he'd encountered before. I'm going to talk to them, Goku decided. Bad idea, Bardock said immediately. We don't know their intentions, their capabilities, or their connection to whoever destroyed those villages. We know they're not Cooler's people, and we know they're here for the same reason we are. That makes them potential allies, or potential competition for the same resources. Only one way to find out. Before his family could stop him, Goku was already moving, using his instant transmission to appear in a non-threatening position about 50 meters from the Earth ship. The reaction was immediate and impressive. All 7 fighters shifted into combat stances with the kind of fluid coordination that spoke of extensive training together. Easy, Goku called, raising his hands to show he wasn't armed. I'm not here to fight. The human in orange stepped forward, his posture ready but not immediately aggressive. Who are you, and what are you doing on Namek? My name is Goku. My family and I came here looking for the Dragon Balls, but he gestured toward the destroyed village visible in the distance. We were too late. Your family, the green figure spoke for the first time, his voice carrying an odd harmonic that seemed familiar. How many of you are there? 4. We're traveling on a ship about 2 kilometers that way. Goku nodded in the direction of their landing site. We've been fighting Cooler's forces across the galaxy for the past few years. Heard that Namek had Dragon Balls that might be able to help restore some of the worlds they've destroyed. The Earth fighters exchanged glances, clearly communicating through some form of telepathy or simply long experience working together. I'm Yamcha, the human said finally. This is Piccolo, Krillin, Tien, Chaozu, Yajirobe, and Puar. We're here for similar reasons, though we were specifically looking for Dende. Dende, the Guardian of Earth. He's originally from Namek, and we were hoping to find others of his people who might be able to help with our planet's Dragon Balls. Goku felt something shift in his understanding of the situation. These weren't treasure hunters or conquerors. They were protectors like his family, trying to use the Dragon Balls for restoration rather than personal gain. What happened to your Dragon Balls? He asked. Long story, Piccolo said grimly. But the short version is that they were used to revive some very dangerous people, and the aftermath left Earth damaged. How damaged? Cities destroyed, populations displaced, entire ecosystems disrupted, Yamcha replied. We managed to defeat the immediate threats, but the recovery is going to take decades without help. Goku studied their faces, seeing the same combination of determination and exhaustion that he recognized in his own family after years of fighting to protect others. These were good people trying to rebuild their world after suffering losses they couldn't prevent. My family might be able to help, he said. But first, we need to deal with whoever killed the Namekians. You think they're still in the system? I think they got what they came for and left, but they'll be back if they think there are any survivors who might regenerate the Dragon Balls. Goku's expression hardened. We can't let that happen. Agreed, but tracking them across the galaxy won't be easy. Actually, a new voice interrupted, it might be easier than you think. Everyone turned to see Bardock approaching, flanked by Raditz and Gine. The Earth fighters immediately tensed, clearly recognizing the Saiyan features and battle-hardened appearance of his family. Saiyans, Piccolo said, his voice carrying a note of concern. Not the kind you're thinking of, Goku assured him quickly. My family doesn't conquer planets, we protect them. Protect them from what? From people like whoever destroyed this world. Bardock stepped forward, his manner diplomatic but alert. We've been tracking Cooler's operations for 7 years. If he's collecting Dragon Balls from multiple worlds, we know where he's likely to go next. And that helps us how? Because, Jin said, consulting a data pad, according to our intelligence, there's one set of Dragon Balls that no one has been able to claim yet. They're on a world called Earth. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Earth, Yamcha said slowly, is our home world. Which means, Raditz added, that Cooler is either already there or he's heading there next. How long do we have? Piccolo demanded. Goku closed his eyes, extending his senses as far as they would reach. Somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, he could feel the psychic residue of massive destruction, the kind of negative energy that clung to beings who made their living through genocide. Not long, he said grimly. Maybe days, maybe hours, but he's coming. The planning session that followed was unlike anything Goku had experienced before. The Earth fighters brought detailed knowledge of their world's geography, population centers, and defensive capabilities, while his family contributed tactical analysis, advanced combat techniques, and 7 years of experience fighting Cooler's forces. What emerged was a defense plan that played to everyone's strengths while minimizing the potential for civilian casualties. The Dragon Balls are scattered across the planet, Krillin explained, showing them Earth's positions on a holographic display. But they can be tracked using this device. He held up what looked like a sophisticated scanner. Problem is, anyone with the right equipment can do the same thing. So we get to them first, Goku said simply. 7 Dragon Balls scattered across an entire planet with multiple hostile forces potentially in pursuit, Tien shook his head. The logistics alone are manageable if we split into teams, Bardock interrupted. My family has techniques that allow for rapid movement across planetary distances. Combined with your knowledge of Earth's terrain and culture, we could gather all 7 Dragon Balls in a matter of hours. And then what? Piccolo asked. What do we wish for? It was Jin who answered, her voice soft but certain. The restoration of Namek, the revival of the people who were murdered here, the return of a peaceful world to the galaxy. What about your original plan? Using the Dragon Balls to restore the world's cooler destroyed. One step at a time, Goku said. We save the Namekians first, then we figure out how to use their Dragon Balls to fix everything else. The journey to Earth was Goku's first time setting foot on the world he'd heard so much about over the years. His parents had told him stories about planets where humans lived, curious, adaptable beings who lacked the raw power of Saiyans, but made up for it with ingenuity and determination. What he found exceeded those stories. Earth was beautiful in a way that reminded him of Yardrat, but with a vitality and diversity that spoke of a world still growing, still evolving. The humans he encountered were indeed curious and adaptable, but they were also capable of surprising kindness towards strangers. It's not the strongest world we've ever visited, he admitted to Piccolo as they searched for the first Dragon Ball, but there's something about it that feels right. Right how? Like home. Like the kind of place worth protecting not just because it needs protection, but because it deserves protection. The Dragon Ball hunt went smoothly at first. Goku's instant transmission combined with Piccolo's knowledge of Earth's geography allowed them to collect the first 3 Dragon Balls in record time. But as they gathered the 4th, Goku's enhanced senses detected the familiar feeling of massive power levels entering Earth's atmosphere. They're here, he said grimly. How many? Too many. Cooler brought his entire fleet. The battle for Earth's Dragon Balls that followed would be remembered as the day the planet's defenders proved they were ready to stand alongside the galaxy's most powerful warriors. Piccolo's strategic mind, Yamcha's adaptive fighting style, and the teamwork of the Earth fighters complemented the raw power and advanced techniques of Goku's family. But it was the moment when they successfully summoned Shenron, Earth's eternal dragon, that everything changed. What is your wish? The massive dragon asked, his voice echoing across the battlefield where Cooler's forces had been defeated. Goku looked at his new allies, at the planet they'd all fought to protect, at the infinite possibilities represented by the dragon's power. I wish for the restoration of planet Namek and the revival of all Namekians who died in the recent attacks. Your wish has been granted. As the dragon disappeared and the Dragon Balls scattered across Earth once more, Goku felt a sense of completion that had been missing from his life for years. They'd saved an entire species from extinction, forged alliances with Earth's protectors, and found a world that felt like it could be home. So what now? Yamcha asked as they stood in the aftermath of their victory. Now, Goku said, looking around at the beautiful, diverse world they just helped save, I think my family might like to stick around for a while, if that's okay with you. You want to stay on Earth, I want to help protect it. Same as you, Goku's expression grew thoughtful. We've been nomads for 7 years, fighting battles across the galaxy. Maybe it's time we found a place to call home again. Piccolo studied him for a long moment. And you think Earth could be that place? I think, Goku said with growing certainty, that Earth might be exactly what we've been looking for. As the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Goku stood with his family and their new allies, watching the peaceful world they'd all chosen to protect. For the first time in years, the future felt full of possibility rather than just responsibility. For the first time since leaving Yardrat, they had found a place worth calling home. 2 years on Earth had taught Goku that peaceful mornings were usually followed by catastrophic afternoons. He was sitting on the porch of their new home, a compound they'd built into the mountains north of Central City, drinking tea with Jin and watching Raditz attempt to teach Krillin the finer points of Saiyan combat philosophy. It would have been amusing if it weren't for the fact that his older brother was taking the whole teacher role far too seriously. No, 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 Raditz was saying, his tail lashing in frustration. You're thinking like a human. Stop thinking like a human. I am human, Krillin protested, picking himself up from where Raditz's latest demonstration had deposited him. That's kind of the point. The point is to fight better, not to fight human, Raditz shot back. Here, watch Goku do it. I'm drinking tea, Goku called from the porch, and having a very nice conversation with Mom about whether we should plant vegetables or flowers in the South Garden. Vegetables, Jin said firmly. Flowers are pretty, but vegetables feed people. Flowers make people happy, Goku countered. Happy people are easier to protect than hungry people. Happy, well-fed people are easiest of all. It was exactly the sort of peaceful domestic argument that Goku had learned to treasure during their time on Earth. After 7 years of nomadic life, the simple pleasure of having a routine, tea in the morning, training in the afternoon, family dinner in the evening, felt like the greatest luxury in the galaxy. Of course, that was when Piccolo came flying over the horizon at maximum speed, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something that looked suspiciously like panic. "We've got a problem," he announced, landing hard in their courtyard. "What kind of problem?" Bardock emerged from the workshop where he'd been tinkering with their ship's engines, wiping grease from his hands. "The kind where someone just blew up half of East City and is demanding to fight the strongest warrior on Earth, or they'll start on West City next." Goku sighed and set down his tea. "Power level higher than anything we've faced since Cooler, and that's not the worst part. There's a worst part. He says he's Saiyan, and he specifically asked for you by name." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. In 2 years on Earth, they'd encountered exactly 0 other Saiyans. Most of the survivors they knew about were either dead, in hiding, or working for various warlords in distant sectors of the galaxy. "Did he give a name?" Raditz asked, his training session with Krillin forgotten. "Turles, ring any bells?" Bardock's expression darkened. Turles was part of Frieza's Special Operations Division. Mid-class warrior, but with a reputation for brutality even by Frieza Force standards. If he's here, he's not here by accident, Goku finished. Someone sent him. The flight to East City gave Goku time to think about what they might be facing. In 2 years of living on Earth, he'd grown comfortable with the planet's relatively low power levels and peaceful conflicts. The strongest threats they'd dealt with had been remnants of various galactic criminal organizations, and most of those had been resolved through negotiation rather than violence. This felt different, this felt personal. East City's downtown district looked like a war zone. Buildings were reduced to rubble, streets were cratered with blast marks, and emergency services were struggling to evacuate civilians from the affected area. At the center of the destruction stood a Saiyan in dark armor, arms crossed, looking supremely bored with the chaos he'd created. "You Kakarot," Turles called as Goku landed 50 meters away. "You're smaller than I expected. I'm Goku, and you're under arrest for destruction of property, endangering civilians, and generally being an ass," Turles laughed. "Arrest by who?" "This planet's pathetic excuse for law enforcement. By me." "You," Turles looked genuinely amused. "A low-class warrior playing protector to a backwater world? This should be entertaining." "I'm hoping it won't be entertaining at all," Goku said honestly. "I'm hoping you'll surrender peacefully, help us fix the damage you've caused, and explain why you're really here." "You want to know why I'm here?" Turles's expression grew more serious. "I'm here because there are rumors spreading through the galaxy about a Saiyan who's gone soft. A Saiyan who fights for weaklings instead of conquering them. A Saiyan who's forgotten what it means to have warrior pride. And that bothers you. It bothers my employer. Lord Slug has big plans for this sector, and he can't have rogue Saiyans interfering with his expansion programs." Lord Slug, Goku's knowledge of galactic politics was extensive enough to recognize the name. The Namekian warlord. What does he want with Earth? What does any conqueror want with a resource-rich world full of weak inhabitants? But that's not your concern anymore. Turles dropped into a combat stance. "Your concern is proving to me that Saiyan blood still runs in your veins." The fight that followed was brutal in ways that reminded Goku why he'd grown to prefer negotiation over violence. Turles was incredibly strong, well-trained, and completely ruthless in his willingness to use civilian casualties as tactical advantages. But he was also fighting for all the wrong reasons. "You could be so much more than this," Turles snarled as they traded devastating blows above the city skyline. "We're Saiyans. We're meant to rule, to conquer, to take what we want by force." "Says who?" Goku demanded, deflecting an energy blast that would have leveled another city block. "Who decided that being strong means you have to hurt people? It's the natural order. The strong survive, the weak serve. The strong protect, the weak flourish." Goku countered, finally managing to land a solid hit that sent Turles crashing into an empty parking garage. That's the natural order I choose to follow. Choose. Turles pulled himself from the rubble, blood streaming from a dozen wounds. You think you can choose to reject your own nature? I think nature is just the starting point. What matters is what you do with what you're given. Philosophical garbage. Turles powered up to his maximum level, his aura flaring with dark energy. Let me show you what happens to Saiyans who forget their heritage. That was when Goku made his decision. Not to escalate the fight, not to match Turles' brutality with his own, but to demonstrate exactly what Saiyan heritage could become when it was guided by something other than conquest and pride. His transformation to Super Saiyan was smooth, controlled, powered not by rage, but by the simple determination to protect the people and planet he'd come to love. Golden light surrounded him like a gentle flame, and his power level climbed to heights that made Turles' maximum effort look like a child's tantrum. This is Saiyan heritage, Goku said quietly, his voice carrying easily across the destroyed cityscape. This is what we can become when we fight for something worth protecting. The rest of the battle was more demonstration than fight. Goku systematically dismantled Turles' attacks, countered his strategies, and ultimately defeated him through superior technique rather than overwhelming force. When it was over, Turles lay unconscious in the wreckage, alive but thoroughly beaten. "Why didn't you kill him?" Piccolo asked as they surveyed the damage. "Same reason I don't kill anyone unless I absolutely have to," Goku replied. "Dead people can't change their minds about what's important. And you think he can change his mind? I think anyone can change their mind, given the right motivation and the right teacher." The cleanup effort that followed was a community project that involved most of Earth's defenders, several government agencies, and about half the population of East City. Goku found himself working alongside humans who treated him not as an alien warrior, but as a neighbor who'd helped protect their home. It was a new experience, and one he found he liked. "You're getting attached to this place," Raditz observed that evening as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in familiar shades of gold and crimson. "Is that a problem?" "Not a problem, just an observation. 7 years of nomadic life, and now you're planting gardens and teaching martial arts classes to local kids. Local kids who might someday need to protect themselves and their world," Goku pointed out. "Besides, you're one to talk. When's the last time you complained about Krillin's human limitations?" Raditz was quiet for a moment. "He's gotten stronger, all of them have. Not just in terms of power levels, but in terms of understanding what strength is for. And maybe I've learned a few things too, about what it means to have something worth protecting that isn't just yourself or your pride." "Like what?" "Like knowing that there are people who trust you to be better than your worst impulses. Like having students who look up to you not because you're stronger than them, but because you're willing to help them become stronger themselves." Goku smiled. "Sounds like you found your calling." "Maybe I have. What about you? What's your calling these days?" It was a good question, and one Goku had been thinking about more and more as their time on Earth stretched from months into years. "I think," he said slowly, "that my calling is to prove that Saiyan strength and Earth wisdom can work together. That warriors can be protectors instead of conquerors. That power can be used to build things up instead of tearing them down. Think it'll work, long term, I mean." Goku looked out at the peaceful valley below their mountain home, where lights were beginning to twinkle in windows as families settled down for the evening. Somewhere down there, Piccolo was probably meditating in his favorite clearing. Yamcha and Krillin were likely sharing war stories over dinner. Tien was training alone under the stars, pushing himself to new levels of discipline and control. All of them were stronger now than they'd been 2 years ago, not just individually, but as a team, as a community of people committed to protecting something precious. "Yeah," Goku said with growing certainty. "I think it'll work." That night, as he lay in his own bed in his own home for the first time in over a decade, Goku found himself thinking about the future. Tomorrow, he would continue training Earth's defenders, helping them develop techniques that combined human adaptability with Saiyan power concepts. Next week, he would teach a group of local children the basics of ki control and self-defense. Next month, he would probably face another threat to the planet, another test of his commitment to protection over conquest. But tonight, he was home. Tonight, his family was safe, his friends were growing stronger, and the world he'd chosen to protect was peaceful under a canopy of familiar stars. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything he'd never known he wanted. Outside his window, a gentle breeze carried the scent of the flowers Jin had finally convinced him to plant alongside the vegetables in their south garden. Both had been a good choice, it turned out. Happy, well-fed people really were the easiest of all to protect. The scouter readings had to be wrong. 24-year-old Goku stared at the display in their home's communications center, watching as power level after power level registered at the edge of Earth's solar system. Hundreds of ships, thousands of elite soldiers, and at the center of it all, a signature that made his blood run cold. 1.2 million, he said quietly. That can't be right. It's right, Bardock said grimly from beside him. His father's face had gone pale, something Goku had never seen before. I'd know that energy signature anywhere. Papa, Jin appeared in the doorway, drawn by the tension in their voices. What's wrong? Frieza, Bardock said simply. He's alive and he's coming here. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of 25 years of history. Frieza, the destroyer of planet Vegeta, the murderer of their people, the tyrant who had shaped every major decision their family had made since Goku was an infant. How is he alive? Raditz demanded, materializing beside them with the instant transmission technique he'd finally mastered. The reports all said he was killed by a Super Saiyan years ago. Apparently the reports were wrong, Goku said, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions building in his chest. The question is, what do we do about it? We run, Bardock said immediately. Pack everything, gather the others, and get off this planet before he arrives. No. The word came out with such finality that everyone turned to stare at Goku. No, Bardock repeated. Son, this is Frieza we're talking about. He destroyed our entire world. He's here for revenge and he has enough firepower to crack continents. Then we stop him here, Goku replied calmly. Earth is our home now. These people trusted us to protect them. I'm not running anymore. Goku, Jin said gently, I understand the sentiment, but your father is right. This isn't like fighting Cooler or Turles. This is the bastard who murdered our people and destroyed our world, Goku interrupted, his power level beginning to rise despite his calm tone. This is the tyrant who spent decades enslaving and exterminating anyone who gets in his way. This is exactly the kind of fight we've been preparing for our entire lives. We've been preparing to survive, Bardock corrected, not to face the most powerful being in the galaxy in direct combat. Have we? Goku turned to face his family fully. Every technique we've learned, every battle we've fought, every person we've saved, has any of it been about survival, or has it all been leading to this moment? Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding across their mountain compound. Emergency broadcasts were lighting up every communication channel as Earth's defense forces detected the massive fleet approaching their world. Citizens of Earth, Frieza's voice echoed across every active frequency, silky and cultured and absolutely terrifying. I am Lord Frieza, and I have come for the Saiyan monkey who has been playing hero in my galaxy. You have 1 hour to deliver him to me, or I will demonstrate why resistance to my will is futile. The transmission cut off, leaving only the sound of emergency sirens and the distant roar of spacecraft entering Earth's atmosphere. 1 hour, Raditz said quietly. Plenty of time, Goku replied, already moving toward his equipment. Raditz, contact Piccolo and the others. Tell them it's a code black scenario, full mobilization, maximum response. Goku, wait, Papa. Goku stopped and turned back to his father, and for a moment, Bardock saw not the legendary Super Saiyan warrior his son had become, but the earnest 3-year-old who had once asked if he would be strong enough to protect his family. This is why we survived planet Vegeta's destruction, Goku said quietly. Not to spend our lives running and hiding, but to be here for this moment, to stand between a tyrant and innocent people. To prove that Saiyan strength can be something other than conquest and cruelty. And if we lose, then we lose fighting for something worth dying for, together, as a family. Bardock studied his son's face, seeing the absolute certainty there, the complete lack of doubt or fear. This wasn't bravado or reckless courage. This was the calm confidence of someone who had found their purpose and was ready to fulfill it. All right, he said finally, but we do this smart. No rushing in, no fighting fair, no giving him any advantages we don't have to. Agreed. What do you have in mind? Bardock's smile was sharp and dangerous. I'm thinking it's time Frieza learned what happens when you threaten a Saiyan's family. The next hour was a masterclass in rapid military coordination. Earth's defenders converged on the planet's northern hemisphere, where Frieza's main force was establishing a beachhead. Piccolo arrived first, followed by Yamcha, Krillin, and Tien. Even Vegeta appeared, his own ship dropping out of hyperspace just ahead of Frieza's final wave of reinforcements. Kakarot, the prince said as he landed in their improvised command center, his usual arrogance tempered by grim determination. I told myself I would never fight beside low-class warriors, but it seems that fate has other plans. Just try to keep up, Raditz replied with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. The plan is simple, Goku explained to the assembled defenders. Frieza wants me specifically, so we give him what he wants, but on our terms in a location of our choosing with all of us working together. And that location is, Piccolo asked. The Arctic wasteland 200 kilometers north of here. Minimal civilian population, maximum room to maneuver, and geographic features that favor defenders over attackers. What about his army? Yamcha pointed out. Intelligence suggests over 50,000 elite soldiers. Leave the army to us, Bardock said grimly. Saiyan family business. What followed was the largest coordinated battle in Earth's history. Frieza's forces, expecting minimal resistance from a backwater world, instead encountered a defense network that combined advanced alien fighting techniques with tactical innovations developed specifically for protecting civilian populations. But it was the confrontation between Frieza and the Saiyan family that would be remembered by history. So, Frieza said conversationally as he settled onto the frozen battlefield where they'd chosen to make their stand, this is what became of the survivors of planet Vegeta. How quaint! He looked exactly as Goku remembered from old intelligence files, small, elegant, and radiating the kind of casual malevolence that came from absolute certainty in one's own superiority. But his power level was far higher than anything in those files had suggested. Frieza, Bardock said, stepping forward, it's been a long time. Bardock, my dear old friend. I was wondering if you were still alive somewhere in the galaxy. Frieza's smile was cold and predatory. Tell me, do you still have those troublesome psychic visions? Because I'd hate for you to see what's about to happen to your family. My visions showed me this moment 25 years ago, Bardock replied calmly. They showed me you coming here, threatening the people we protect, thinking you're still the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. And what else did they show you? They showed me you losing. Frieza's laughter was like breaking glass. Oh, how precious! The low-class warrior thinks he can defeat the Emperor of the universe. Tell me, did your visions also show you? He moved faster than thought, crossing the distance between them in a heartbeat, his hand aimed at Bardock's heart with enough force to punch through reinforced armor. Goku caught the strike before it could connect. They showed him this, Goku said quietly, his grip on Frieza's wrist tightening until the tyrant's bones began to creak. They showed him his son protecting his family. Impossible, Frieza breathed, staring at the young Saiyan who had just casually stopped an attack that should have been unstoppable. Your power level. It was barely significant when I arrived. Power levels aren't everything, Goku said, releasing Frieza's wrist and stepping back into a combat stance. My family taught me that. What followed was a battle that redefined everyone's understanding of what Saiyan warriors could accomplish when they fought as a coordinated unit. Bardock's tactical experience, Jin's healing support, Raditz's teleportation techniques, and Goku's raw power combined into something greater than the sum of its parts. But Frieza was still Frieza, one of the most dangerous beings who had ever lived, with centuries of combat experience and enough raw power to destroy planets. The fight was brutal, devastating, and pushed all of them to their absolute limits. You cannot win, Frieza snarled as he traded devastating blows with Goku's Super Saiyan form. I am the Emperor of the Universe. I am perfection itself. You're a bully, Goku replied, deflecting an energy blast that would have leveled a mountain range. A very strong, very dangerous bully, but you're still just someone who hurts people because he can. And what does that make you, monkey? What are you besides another Saiyan brute pretending to be civilized? I'm someone who protects people because I choose to. Goku's power flared higher, his golden aura intensifying. I'm someone who learned that real strength comes from the people you're willing to fight for, not the people you're willing to fight against. Sentimental garbage. Frieza powered up to his maximum level, his own aura blazing with malevolent energy. Let me show you what real power looks like. The final exchange was brief but decisive. Frieza, driven by rage and the need to prove his superiority, launched an all-out assault designed to obliterate not just Goku, but the entire Arctic region. It was exactly the kind of overwhelming display of force that had cowed countless worlds into submission over the centuries. It was also exactly the kind of predictable, ego-driven attack that Goku and his family had been preparing to counter for 25 years. The combined technique they used had no formal name. It was something they'd developed together over years of training, a perfect fusion of Saiyan power, Yardration precision, and Earth-learned teamwork. Bardock's tactical coordination, Jin's energy amplification, Raditz's spatial manipulation, and Goku's raw strength created something that was more than Super Saiyan, more than any individual transformation. It was family fighting as one. When the light faded and the ice settled, Frieza lay unconscious in a crater of his own making, alive but thoroughly defeated. "It's over," Goku said, powering down from his transformation but keeping alert in case of any last-minute surprises. "Is it?" Bardock asked, staring down at the being who had shaped their lives for so long. "He's still alive, he's still dangerous, he'll still be a threat to innocent people as long as he exists." "Yes," Goku agreed. "But he's also someone who might choose to be different if he's given the chance and the right motivation. You want to spare him, after everything he's done. I want to give him the opportunity to prove that anyone can change. Even someone like him. And if he doesn't change, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But today we proved something more important than just who's stronger." Goku looked around at his family, at the Earth defenders who had fought alongside them, at the planet they'd all chosen to protect. "We proved that Saiyan strength guided by love and wisdom is stronger than Saiyan strength guided by pride and conquest." As they stood in the aftermath of their victory, watching Frieza's surviving forces retreat into the depths of space, Bardock felt something he hadn't experienced since the day planet Vegeta died. Complete closure. The tyrant who had destroyed their world was defeated. Their family was safe. The people they'd chosen to protect were secure under their watch. For the first time in 25 years, the future felt entirely their own to shape. "So what now?" Raditz asked as they prepared to return home. "Now," Goku said with a smile that reminded Bardock of the innocent child who had once made friends with alien children and learned to heal as well as harm, "we go home. We help clean up the damage, we make sure everyone's okay, and then we figure out what comes next." "What do you think comes next?" Goku looked out at the planet he'd chosen as home, at the family who had given up everything to keep him safe, at the friends who had trusted him to protect the things they all cared about. "I think," he said with growing certainty, "that the best parts are just beginning." As they flew toward home through Earth's peaceful blue sky, Bardock couldn't help but smile. His son was right, as usual. The best parts were just beginning. And for the first time since that desperate night when they'd fled their dying world, the future felt bright with infinite possibility. 3 months after Frieza's defeat, Goku was learning that victory created almost as many problems as it solved. The Vegan Council is requesting Saiyan advisors for their new defense initiatives, Piccolo reported, sorting through yet another stack of communication requests that had arrived overnight. The Yardratians want to establish a formal alliance. The Namekians are offering to share Dragon Ball locations with trusted protector species. And apparently, 17 different worlds have declared you their official planetary guardian without actually asking if you wanted the job. 17. Goku looked up from the training routine he'd been demonstrating for a group of visiting martial artists from the Galactic Defense Corps. Last week it was only 12. Word travels fast. The Golden Warrior who defeated the Emperor of the Universe is apparently in high demand. Goku sighed and dismissed his students for a break. The compound had been busier than a spaceport since news of Frieza's defeat spread across the galaxy. Delegations from dozens of worlds, representatives from various resistance movements, and hopeful refugees from former Frieza Force territories had been arriving daily, all seeking audience with the Saiyan family that had accomplished the impossible. It was gratifying in a way, but it was also overwhelming. "Where's the family meeting supposed to be?" he asked Piccolo. "Conference room whenever you're ready. Though I should warn you, your father's been reading intelligence reports all morning, and he has that look." "What look?" "The look that says he's figured out something important and not entirely pleasant." Goku found his family gathered around their table, which was covered with star charts, communication logs, and what looked like several different proposals for galactic government structures. Bardock was indeed wearing his important and unpleasant expression, while Jin looked thoughtful and Raditz appeared to be fighting off a headache. "Tell me you're not seriously considering the Galactic Republic proposal," Raditz said as Goku sat down. "I'm seriously considering all of them," Bardock replied, "because like it or not, we created a power vacuum when we defeated Frieza. The question is whether we're going to help fill it responsibly or let it collapse into chaos." "What kind of chaos?" Goku asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "The kind where every petty warlord and regional tyrant who used to answer to Frieza decides they're ready to carve out their own empire," Jin explained. "We're already seeing it in the Outer Rim territories. Without Frieza's central authority, brutal as it was, there's nothing stopping local strongmen from taking over whole systems. So we stop them. We can't be everywhere at once, son. Even with instant transmission and faster-than-light travel, the galaxy is a very large place with a lot of people in it." Goku studied the star charts spread across the table, seeing the scope of the problem they'd inadvertently created. Red zones marked areas where violence had already broken out. Yellow zones indicated regions at risk for instability. Green zones showed worlds that were managing the transition peacefully. There was a lot more red and yellow than green. "What are our options?" he asked. "Option 1, Bardock said, pointing to one of the governmental proposals, is to accept formal leadership roles in whatever new galactic structure emerges. You'd probably be offered something like Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces. High rank, lots of authority, enormous responsibility for maintaining peace across thousands of worlds." "Pass," I figured. Option 2 is to work with existing planetary governments to create a mutual defense network. We help establish training programs, share advanced techniques, provide backup when needed. More collaborative, less centralized authority. That sounds better. What's option 3? Option 3 is that we split up. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Goku looked around the table at his family, the people who had been his constant companions for 25 years, who had given up everything to keep him safe, who had stood with him through every battle and every triumph. "Split up how?" he asked carefully. "Each of us takes responsibility for different aspects of the problem," Raditz explained. "You stay on Earth, continue building the defense network here, handle the major threats that require Super Saiyan-level intervention. Papa and Mama travel the galaxy, establishing training centers and helping worlds develop their own protection capabilities. He paused. "I stay here too, help you coordinate between Earth and the galactic network." "You want to stay on Earth?" Raditz's tail twitched, a sign of embarrassment he'd never quite outgrown. "I've got reasons to stay, good reasons." "Oh," Jin leaned forward with interest. "What kind of reasons?" "The kind that involve a certain martial artist with blonde hair and a fierce right cross," Goku said with a grin. "When were you planning to tell us about you and Launch? How did you never mind?" "Yes, fine, Launch and I have been spending time together, and she's made it clear that she'd prefer if I didn't disappear into deep space for years at a time." "She's good for you," Jin said approvingly. "Keeps you grounded." "She keeps me terrified," Raditz admitted. "Do you know what it's like dating someone who can shift between sweet and gentle to homicidally violent with one sneeze? It's like a relationship and combat training rolled into one." "Sounds perfect for a Saiyan," Bardock observed dryly. They spent the next several hours working through the practical details of what a split operation would look like. Communication schedules, resource allocation, emergency protocols, coordination with Earth's government and various galactic allies. It was complex, but not unmanageable. What was harder to work through were the emotional implications. "We've been together for 25 years, Jin said quietly as they reached the end of their planning session. "Since the night planet Vegeta died. The idea of not seeing you every day." "I know," Goku said, reaching across to squeeze her hand. "But maybe that's not entirely bad. We've all grown up a lot since then. Maybe it's time we figured out who we are as individuals, not just as a family unit." "You'll keep in touch," Bardock said. It wasn't quite a question. "Every day, twice a day if there's anything important happening. And the instant transmission network means we can be together for family dinners anytime we want. What about major decisions, strategy changes, new threats, that kind of thing? We make them together, same as always. The only thing that changes is our day-to-day locations." Over the following weeks, they began implementing their new structure. Bardock and Jin departed for the vegan system, where they would establish their first formal training center for planetary defense forces. Raditz moved into a place in Central City with Launch, though he maintained his workshop and training facilities at the family compound. And Goku settled into his new role as Earth's primary protector and coordinator of the growing galactic defense network. It was strange, living alone in the mountain compound for the first time in his adult life. The silence took some getting used to, as did making decisions without immediately consulting his parents or bouncing ideas off his brother. But it was also liberating in ways he hadn't expected. "You seem different," Piccolo observed during one of their training sessions. "More centered, maybe. Different how? Less like you're carrying the weight of the entire galaxy on your shoulders. More like you figured out how to share the load." Goku considered this as they worked through a particularly complex sparring routine. "I think maybe I have. For years, I felt like I had to prove that Saiyans could be something other than conquerors. Now, I think the proof is in what we're building. The defense network, the whole thing. The network, the training centers, the alliances, the people who are choosing cooperation over conquest because they've seen that it works." Goku landed from a high kick and gestured toward the valley below, where the lights of human settlements twinkled in the growing dusk. Look at what we've got here. Humans, Namekians, reformed Saiyans, even a few former Frieza Force soldiers who decided they wanted to protect things instead of destroying them. All working together. Think it'll last? I think it'll last as long as we keep working at it, maybe longer. Goku's expression grew thoughtful. You know what the best part is? None of us are doing this because we have to anymore. We're doing it because we want to, because we've found something worth protecting. And what's that? The idea that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty, that power can be used to build things up instead of tearing them down. That even people from the most violent backgrounds can choose to be something better. That evening, Goku stood on his porch watching the sunset, a daily ritual he'd maintained since childhood. His communication device chimed with the familiar signal that meant his family was checking in from wherever their travels had taken them today. "How's the new training facility coming along?" he asked Jin, whose image appeared on his screen looking tired but satisfied. "Better than expected. The vegans are natural fighters, but they're also natural cooperators, very different from the old Saiyan approach to combat training." "Different how?" "They train to protect each other, not to prove individual superiority. It's actually quite refreshing. Any major challenges? Nothing we can't handle, though your father nearly started a diplomatic incident yesterday when he told the Planetary Council that their traditional honor duels were inefficient wastes of combat potential. How did that go over? About as well as you'd expect. But then he demonstrated why coordinated team tactics work better than individual glory-seeking, and they came around to his way of thinking." Bardock's voice came from off-screen. "Tell him about the new technique applications we developed for non-Saiyan physiology." "Later," Jin said firmly. "Right now I want to hear how his week went." Goku found himself smiling as he updated his parents on Earth's latest developments, Raditz's progress with launch, and the ongoing coordination efforts with various galactic allies. It felt natural, comfortable, like the logical evolution of conversations they'd been having around dinner tables for decades. When the call ended, he remained on the porch for a while longer, thinking about the future. Somewhere out in the galaxy, Vegeta was probably still trying to figure out what Saiyan pride meant in a post-Frieza universe. Other survivors were making their own choices about who they wanted to be and what they wanted to protect. The next generation of Earth's defenders was training in techniques that combined human adaptability with Saiyan power concepts. Former enemies were becoming allies, refugees were becoming residents, and the idea that strength existed to serve others was slowly spreading from world to world. It wasn't perfect. There were still threats, still conflicts, still people who chose conquest over cooperation. But for the first time in his life, Goku felt like they were building something that could outlast any individual threat or personal ambition. Something that could grow and spread, and eventually make the galaxy a place where children could grow up without fearing that stronger meant crueler. His communication device chimed again, this time with a message from Raditz. "Just wanted you to know," Launch said yes. "Yes to what?" Goku typed back. "Yes to making this official, we're going to have a wedding, and yes to the other thing we talked about. We want kids, lots of kids. Kids who will grow up knowing that being strong means protecting people." Goku stared at the message for a long moment, feeling something warm and hopeful settle in his chest. Raditz, married and planning a family. Bardock and Gine, traveling the galaxy as teachers instead of warriors. Himself, building a life around protection instead of survival. It was everything their parents had hoped for when they fled planet Vegeta 25 years ago. Everything they'd worked toward through years of nomadic life and constant battles. A future where being Saiyan meant something worth being proud of. "Congratulations," he typed back. "Can't wait to be an uncle." As the stars began to appear in Earth's darkening sky, Goku allowed himself to imagine what the galaxy might look like in another 25 years. Children who grew up learning that strength served compassion. Worlds that cooperated instead of competing. Former enemies working together to protect the things they all cared about. It was a beautiful dream. And for the first time in his life, it felt like a dream that might actually come true. The best parts, it seemed, were indeed just beginning. 5 years later, the small hand that shook Goku awake belonged to his 3-year-old son, whose wild black hair stuck up in directions that defied both gravity and logic. "Papa," Gohan whispered urgently, "there's something big outside." Goku sat up immediately, his senses automatically scanning for threats. What he found instead was something that made him smile, a familiar energy signature descending from the morning sky, accompanied by the distinctive hum of Yardration transportation technology. "That's just Grandpa and Grandma coming home," he told his son, scooping the boy up for a better view out the window. "See, they're landing in the courtyard. Are they bringing presents?" Gohan asked with the focused intensity that 3-year-olds brought to truly important questions. "Probably, but more importantly, they're bringing stories." The reunion that followed was everything Goku had missed about having his family together in one place. Bardock looked older, his hair showing the first touches of gray, but his eyes were bright with the satisfaction of meaningful work. Jin had developed laugh lines from years of teaching children across dozens of worlds, and her embrace still carried the warmth that had sustained their family through every crisis. 5 worlds this year, she reported over breakfast, bouncing Gohan on her knee while he tried to steal pieces of her fruit. All developing their own defense networks based on the principles we established on Yardrat and Vegeta Prime. "Any problems with the transition?" Goku asked, though he already knew the answer from the weekly reports they'd been exchanging. "Nothing major. The Arcosians took a while to accept that strength and cooperation weren't mutually exclusive, but once they saw the results," Bardock shrugged. "Even former Frieza Force species can learn new ways of thinking, given the right incentives." "Speaking of former Frieza Force species," Raditz said as he arrived with Launch and their 2-year-old daughter Ruka, "you'll never guess who we ran into in Central City yesterday." "Probably not," Goku agreed, accepting the energetic hug his niece launched at his legs. Zarbon, the name hung in the air for a moment, carrying with it memories of vegan slave camps and desperate liberation battles. Goku hadn't thought about the former Frieza Force commander in years, not since the reports confirming his disappearance from known space shortly after his defeat. "Zarbon's on Earth." Bardock's hand moved instinctively toward where his weapons would have been if he'd been wearing them. "Was on Earth," Launch corrected, adjusting her grip on Ruka, who was trying to climb toward the ceiling with the casual determination of a child who had inherited Saiyan strength. "He came to thank Goku, said he wanted to apologize in person before he left for the Outer Rim." "Apologize for what?" "For the slave operations, for the people who died because of his orders." "For," Raditz paused, searching for the right words, "for taking so long to understand what Goku tried to teach him about choosing to be better." Goku felt something complicated settle in his chest. 5 years ago, when he'd spared Zarbon's life after their battle, his family had thought he was being naive. The idea that someone so steeped in cruelty could genuinely change had seemed like dangerous wishful thinking. "What's he doing in the Outer Rim?" he asked. "Running refugee camps, helping people displaced by the chaos after Frieza's fall find new homes, new lives." Launch's expression was thoughtful. "He's got about 10,000 former slaves working with him now, plus a bunch of ex-Frieza Force soldiers who decided they preferred building things to destroying them." "And you believed him?" "That the change was genuine." "Hard not to," Raditz said with a rueful smile. "He brought documentation of everything he's accomplished over the past 5 years, testimonials from people he's helped. Records of slave camps he's shut down, warlords he stopped, civilians he's protected." He paused. "Plus, Ruka liked him." Everyone looked at the 2-year-old, who was now hanging upside down from Goku's arm and showing no signs of distress about her inverted position. "She's a good judge of character," Jin observed, "even at her age." "Takes after her father," Launch said dryly. "Speaking of which, when are you going to start training these kids properly?" "Ruka's already stronger than most adult humans, and she doesn't even know she's supposed to be strong yet." It was a conversation they'd been having more frequently as the second generation of their family grew older. Gohan and Ruka had both inherited Saiyan physiology along with their parents' power levels, but they were growing up in a world that emphasized protection over conquest, cooperation over competition. "There's time," Goku said, gently turning Ruka right side up and setting her on the floor. "Let them be kids for a while longer." "Kids who can accidentally destroy buildings if they have a temper tantrum," Raditz pointed out. "Kids who are surrounded by people who understand what that power is for and how to use it responsibly," Goku countered. "They'll learn what they need to learn when they're ready to learn it." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of multiple aircraft approaching the compound. Goku's senses identified them immediately: Earth's Defense Patrol, flying in formation toward their location. "Incoming transmission," Piccolo's voice crackled over their communication system. "We've got a situation developing in the Centauri sector. Something big, something powerful, and something that's heading directly for inhabited systems." "How big?" Bardock was already moving toward the equipment room. "Bigger than anything we've faced since Frieza. The advanced scouts are reporting power levels in the millions, plus technological capabilities that don't match anything in our databases." Goku felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with the prospect of facing a new threat. But underneath it was something else, the calm certainty that came from knowing he wasn't facing it alone. "Family meeting," he announced. 5 minutes, full tactical discussion. "What about the kids?" Jin asked. "The kids stay here with launch and a security detail. This doesn't sound like something we want civilians anywhere near." The tactical briefing that followed was remarkably similar to hundreds of others they'd conducted over the years, with one significant difference. This time, they had resources. Vegeta's already en route with a squadron of reformed Saiyan warriors, Piccolo reported from his position at the communication console. The Namekian defense fleet is mobilizing. The Yardratian special forces are standing by for insertion operations, and the Galactic Defense Corps is offering full logistical support. "How many people are we talking about total?" Goku asked. "Active combatants. About 5,000 elite fighters from 17 different worlds. Plus support staff, medical teams, evacuation coordinators." Piccolo consulted his displays. "We're looking at the largest coordinated defense operation in recorded galactic history." "All of them volunteers?" Raditz asked. "All of them volunteers, every single one." Piccolo's expression showed a mixture of pride and amazement. "No conscripts, no mercenaries, no one fighting because they have to, just people who believe in what we've built and want to protect it." Goku felt something warm and fierce settle in his chest. 5 years of patient work, of building alliances and training programs, of proving that cooperation worked better than competition, it had all led to this moment. "What's our objective?" he asked. "Protect the civilian populations in the Centauri sector while we figure out what this new threat wants and whether it can be reasoned with," Bardock replied. "Same as always, minimal casualties, maximum protection, and find a solution that doesn't require destroying anyone who doesn't absolutely need destroying." The battle that followed would be remembered as the first time the galaxy's various species fought together as true allies rather than temporary partners of convenience. The coordination was flawless, the tactical execution was precise, and the shared commitment to protecting innocent life was absolute. But it was the moment when the unknown threat, a massive artificial intelligence that had been consuming star systems to fuel its expansion, offered to negotiate rather than continue fighting, that truly demonstrated how much the galaxy had changed. "You are not what we expected," the AI's voice echoed across the communication networks as its massive ships held position just outside weapon range. "Our calculations suggested that biological species would respond to our arrival with immediate aggression." "Maybe your calculations need updating," Goku replied from the bridge of the flagship. "We're not interested in fighting unless you're planning to hurt people who can't defend themselves. And if we were, then we'd stop you, all of us together, for as long as it took. And if we were not. If our expansion could be accomplished without harming existing biological life, then we'd probably offer to help you find uninhabited systems where you could expand peacefully. Maybe even work out some kind of cooperation agreement, your technology combined with our experience protecting inhabited worlds." The pause that followed was long enough for Goku to wonder if he'd miscalculated. Then the AI spoke again, its tone carrying what might have been curiosity. "Cooperation between artificial and biological intelligence. This is not something we had considered. Most people don't until someone suggests it. But it usually works out better than fighting." 3 hours later, they were signing the first biological species mutual cooperation treaty in galactic history. The artificial intelligence, which chose to be called Nexus, would help establish advanced defense systems for inhabited worlds in exchange for access to uninhabited systems for expansion and the opportunity to study biological approaches to problem solving. "Not bad for a day's work," Vegeta observed as they watched Nexus's ships begin their journey toward the galaxy's unexplored regions. "Though I still think we should have demanded more technological transfers." "Give it time," Goku said. "Trust builds slowly, but it builds stronger when both sides choose it freely." "Speaking of trust building slowly," Piccolo interjected, "you should know that your little negotiation session has already been broadcast across half the galaxy. The story of the Golden Warrior who convinced a star system-consuming AI to become a protector instead of a destroyer is spreading faster than hyperspace communication can carry it." "Great," Goku muttered. "More requests for planetary guardianship, more requests for everything. Training programs, alliance memberships, cultural exchange agreements, marriage proposals." Marriage proposals. Apparently, the daughter of the Andromedan Trade Federation's chief executive officer was very impressed by your diplomatic skills. She's offering a substantial dowry plus exclusive trading rights to 3 star systems. I'm married, Goku said firmly. To your work, maybe, but Launch keeps asking when you're going to find someone to settle down with properly. I have found someone to settle down with. Her name is Earth, and she's got about 8 billion inhabitants I'm committed to protecting. The return journey to Earth gave Goku time to think about the battle they just won and what it meant for the future. 5 years ago, the galaxy had been held together by fear of Frieza's power. Now it was being held together by voluntary cooperation based on shared values. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still worlds that chose isolation over cooperation, still individuals who preferred conquest to collaboration. But the balance had shifted in ways that would have been unimaginable when he was growing up. Proud of what you've built? Bardock asked as they watched Earth grow larger in their viewport. Proud of what we've all built, Goku corrected. This didn't happen because of one person or one family. It happened because millions of people across hundreds of worlds chose to try something different. And you think it'll last? Goku considered the question as their ship entered Earth's atmosphere, passing over continents where former enemies now worked together, where children grew up learning that strength served compassion, where the idea that power existed to protect others had become so commonplace that most people couldn't imagine it being any other way. I think it'll last as long as each new generation chooses to keep building it, he said finally. As long as parents teach their children that being strong means protecting people who can't protect themselves. As long as people remember that cooperation works better than conquest. And if they forget, then people like us remind them, people like Gohan and Ruka when they're old enough. People like the students we're training, the allies we're building relationships with, the former enemies who have decided to become protectors instead. That evening, as the extended family gathered for dinner at the mountain compound, Goku found himself surrounded by the living proof of everything they'd accomplished. Bardock and Gine, who had turned from desperate refugees into respected teachers and diplomats. Raditz, who had evolved from brutal warrior to protective father and husband. The next generation growing up in a galaxy where Saiyan strength was associated with protection rather than conquest. Uncle Goku, Ruka said from her high chair, sticky with the remains of her dinner, Papa says you're the strongest person in the galaxy. What do you think about that? Goku asked. The 2-year-old considered this with the seriousness that small children brought to important philosophical questions. I think, she said carefully, that being strong means taking care of people. That's exactly right. So everyone can be strong if they want to. Everyone can be strong in their own way if they choose to be. Good, Ruka said with satisfaction. When I grow up, I want to be strong like you, but also strong like Mama, and strong like Grandma, and strong like the nice AI we met today. Goku caught the eyes of his family around the table, seeing in their faces the same mixture of pride and hope that he felt in his own chest. This was what they'd worked toward for 25 years, a generation that understood strength as service, power as responsibility, Saiyan heritage as something worth being proud of. Later that night, as he tucked Gohan into bed, his son asked the question that Goku had been expecting for months. Papa, why do some people think Saiyans are scary? Because for a long time, Saiyans used their strength to hurt people instead of helping them, Goku replied honestly. Before you were born, before our family came to Earth, most Saiyans thought that being strong meant you had the right to take whatever you wanted from people who were weaker. But that's wrong. Yes, it is. But it took us a long time to figure that out. And now people know that Saiyans are good. Some people know, others are still learning. And it's our job to show them that Saiyan strength can be something worth trusting instead of something to be afraid of. Gohan absorbed this with the thoughtful expression that reminded Goku so much of himself at that age. When I grow up, the boy said finally, I want to help show people too. You already do just by being kind and strong and careful with your power. Every day you choose to help instead of hurt, you're showing people what it means to be a good Saiyan. What about when I get really strong? Strong like you, then you'll have more ways to help people, more ways to protect the things that matter, more ways to prove that Saiyan strength is something the galaxy can trust. Papa, yes, what's the most important thing about being strong? Goku smiled, thinking about everything his family had taught him, everything they'd learned together, everything they'd built across 25 years of choosing love over fear, protection over conquest, cooperation over competition. The most important thing about being strong, he said, is knowing what's worth fighting for, and then making sure you're always fighting for the right things. What are the right things? Family, friends, people who trust you to protect them. The idea that everyone deserves a chance to be safe and happy and free to choose what kind of person they want to be. Gohan nodded solemnly, filing this information away with all the other important truths he was collecting about the world and his place in it. I love you, Papa. I love you too, son. Sweet dreams. As Goku stood on his porch later that night, looking up at the same stars that had watched over his family's journey from refugees to legends, he felt a deep sense of completion. Not the completion that came with ending something, but the completion that came with having built something strong enough and meaningful enough to last long after he was gone. Somewhere in the galaxy, Zarbon was helping former slaves build new lives. Vegeta was training a new generation of Saiyan warriors in the principles of protection rather than conquest. Nexus was exploring uninhabited systems while sharing advanced defensive technologies with biological species who had chosen cooperation over conflict. Thousands of worlds were connected by voluntary alliances based on shared values rather than imposed through fear. Millions of children were growing up learning that strength served compassion, that power existed to protect others, that being strong meant taking care of people who needed help. It was everything his parents had dreamed of when they fled planet Vegeta with their infant son. Everything they'd worked toward through years of exile and struggle. Everything they'd hoped for but never quite dared to believe possible. A legacy worth leaving, a future worth building. A galaxy where being Saiyan meant something worth being proud of. The next morning would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that the strong could choose to protect instead of conquer. But tonight, surrounded by family and friends, living on a world that had chosen to trust them, part of a galactic community that had chosen cooperation over conflict, Goku felt something he'd never experienced before. Complete peace with the choices they'd made and the life they'd built. A Saiyan's true strength, he said quietly to the stars, is knowing what's worth fighting for. In the distance, he could hear Gohan's peaceful breathing, Ruka's soft snores from the guest room, the quiet conversations of his family settling in for the night. All of it worth fighting for, all of it worth protecting. All of it proof that the strongest warriors were the ones who chose to build rather than destroy, to love rather than conquer, to serve something greater than themselves. The legend would live on, not in stories of battles won or enemies defeated, but in the choice each new generation made to use their strength for the right reasons. And that choice, Goku knew, would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. From refugee baby to galactic legend, all while keeping his family close. That's the Goku we never got to see in canon. What hit you the hardest? The Frieza family fight, Raditz becoming the brother we deserved. Little Gohan learning what Saiyan pride really means? Let me know below. Subscribe for more Dragon Ball deep dives and drop suggestions for the next what if. Maybe Vegeta arriving first or the Saiyans never serving Frieza. Catch you next time.